Hey, what's going on, everybody? How's it going? I'm Ian Douglas, I'm the author of this website, Tech Interview Guide. Welcome to the stream. I'm going to get some ear monitors in so I can hear what's going on too. And shut off that audio over there. All right. Yeah, it gets me pumped up too, Feisty Kitty. So there's if you've watched any of the Avengers movies or the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, there's an actor, Jeremy Renner, who plays Hawkeye, and he's actually a singer. He's actually a rock musician, and some of his stuff is actually pretty decent for music, like for rock music. And he's got a tune that sounds a lot like that intro music that I play, and it's one of my favorite songs of his that I listen to. And so when I heard that one and found out it was free, I'm like, "Are you kidding? That one's free?" So that one's actually who does that song? It's a it's a band or an artist called Slipstream with no vowels. Um, so if you want to go check that out, let me go get the link for it. Share. Um, is that what I share? No, I can share from here. I think share copy song link and paste. So it's free on Spotify, and they've got other music that they make as well. So I actually reached out to the artist when I started streaming a year ago, going, "I love this song. Like, is it cool that I use this as my intro?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's free. It's fine." And I'm like, "Well, can I like pay you back for using the song?" And they're like, "Yeah, here's a link to our other music." So I bought a bunch of their music. So it worked out great. But yeah, Jeremy Renner's a musician. He has a lot of kind of rock blues kind of stuff, and he's got this one song, and I always forget the name of it. Um, it'll come to me later, I'm sure. As soon as I stop streaming, you're like, "Oh, that's what the song is." But he's got a song that sounds a lot like that, and so when I heard this one, it was a free piece of music that you can download with a Stream Deck, the little controller box with the buttons on it, and you can go through and you can find like free music and free sounds and stuff like that, like a little whip crack and stuff like that that I play when whipped shows up in the stream. And so they just got like all this free music and free audio samples and stuff like that that you can use. So I thought, yeah, I'm just going to use that as my intro music, and then it's stuck. Every time I hear it, I get like really pumped up. I'll like listen to it in the car too, and there's no lyrics or anything. It's just this, 4-minute looping sort of sample. It's pretty great. But cool. Hope everybody's doing well. A little bit of change out on the layout around here. We got like a new event thing happening over here for people that follow and so on. Some of it's like test data. So ignore the fact that I followed myself. That was just test data happening in there. Let me go in and see if I can refresh that, and it'll get rid of some of them. Tech Dinosaur was helping me with some of the stuff earlier. But we've got something new and interesting set up now. So before, when somebody would follow the channel, we would see like a little alert show up in a box, and I would reach over to my Stream Deck and hit a button. But I've figured out how to automate that now. So if one of you wants to test it and unfollow me and refollow me, you'll see the lights behind me blink, and I'll keep my hands up here so you know I'm not touching anything, and there's no foot pedal either. But I've automated that now, so it's gonna watch that. And I've also got this like repeating, like, hey, go check out these other streamers. So it's like a repeating shout out thing that I made as well for the bot. So every couple of minutes, it's gonna find somebody whose stream I actually go watch myself, and it's usually people who are into coding or people who are, there we go, Feisty Kitty. So it's people that I follow on stream on Twitch as streamers, and people that I think are worth your time to go watch. And so if you see those popping up, feel free to give those folks a follow. They're definitely worth your time. Some of them are entry-level coders. Some of them are very seasoned, very senior level developers, or in positions where they like to help people out and do education and stuff like that. Cool. The Harbrafat. Are math and dynamic programming important for interviews? Depending on the role, they could be. If you're going to go for like a data science or a machine learning type of role, then yeah, they're absolutely going to be needed. You'll need to know like what kinds of math functions you're going to need to get the job done. If you are just doing regular programming, probably won't need very much at all. Dynamic programming, is a little bit misunderstood in that you're iterating over data, trying to collect like combinatorics is what we call it, where you're trying to find lots and lots of combinations, and you're trying to find like how many different ways can I roll a set of dice to roll a score of 12. So you get a couple of dice, like 3 or 4 dice, they're all the same size or whatever, and you're like constantly rolling the dice, and you're trying to find how many unique combinations can I make where I'm rolling the value of 12. That's dynamic programming, where the misconception there is that dynamic programming uses caching. And so sometimes when people talk about dynamic programming, they really mean that they're just trying to cache what they're doing otherwise. So, for example, I do a lot of mock interviews on Interviewing.io. You can do !IIO. If you want a referral code, it'll give you some money off if you want to buy interviews over there. I do mock interviews on there, and one of the problems that I give on that platform is a depth first search problem. And a lot of people, when they read the prompt, are like, oh, this is dynamic programming. It's like, well, you can solve it with dynamic programming, but dynamic programming does a lot of caching. And the downside to using dynamic programming is sometimes you over cache what you need to. And so in one scenario where like you're trying to do the dice, for example, you end up caching like every combination because you don't want to have to recalculate, with these inputs, you have to go through and do all the math or whatever that processing is. You don't have to do that again and again and again. You've already done it once. So you kind of keep a lookup table. But depending on what you're iterating over and the amount of data that you have in your data set, you can end up caching a lot of data, and it ends up being an enormous amount of RAM because you're exploring every conceivable path through that data and not just the paths that you actually need. And so that's the downside to using dynamic programming. And so when you're in an interview, what I think is helpful, like is DP important? Some companies are not asking DP problems anymore. Like Amazon announced a year ago that they weren't going to do dynamic programming anymore. And in the fall, Facebook also announced that they weren't going to ask dynamic programming problems anymore because everybody kind of tackles them the same way. It's a bottom-up approach, and you just add some caching as you're iterating over data. And nobody's really thought of like anything new or clever as far as what those problems are. And so some companies are stopping asking those questions because they're not getting good signals, as we call them, over like how do you think about a problem? How do you break a problem down? At the end of the day, dynamic programming is just a repeatable subproblem with caching. And so some companies are not asking those anymore. On the job, I don't know that I've ever done dynamic programming on the job. In fact, on the job, I've only ever done recursion twice, but I've done it dozens of times on interviews. So recursion can be helpful. I'm sure that, there are people that do recursion on a regular basis at their job. I'm saying in my career of 26 years, I've done recursion twice. So it's not something that is as popular. So as far as math goes, math is important for some things, but not others. Again, depending on the kind of job that you're trying to do. If you're doing, API development, it may not come into play. If you're doing machine learning, data science, it'll absolutely come into play. If you're doing things like trying to figure out how to dynamically put things on a screen and adjust things by percentages as screen sizes change, there may be a little bit of math involved. It's going to be like high school algebra at best. You're not going to get into like trigonometry and calculus and things like that as a programmer generally, unless you're getting into like really like in depth like data or like a lot of number crunching of some kind. So, if you're doing stuff on blockchain, if you're doing a lot of data processing, if you're doing, graphics processing, there's going to be a ton of math. Absolutely. You'll get into like really complex math, especially the 3D vectoring and so on. In a typical kind of like, I'm just building API endpoints or I'm working on front end HTML and CSS, there's not going to be very much math. Or at best, like I said, it's going to be like algebra, like probably 8th, 9th grade algebra. So hopefully that helps you out. Tonight we're going to be doing resume reviews. And I was just kind of kicking around going, dinner ended early, got everything I need. I might as well start streaming early. So here I am. Wanted to make a couple of announcements as far as like what I'm doing with the stream and my Twitch account and all that kind of stuff. And then, on the hour, we'll probably get into those resume reviews. One thing that I started doing this week is going through different Twitch channels and unsubscribing from Twitch channels. Let me explain why. It's not that I don't want to support those folks anymore. and hopefully I won't get in trouble with Twitch for saying this, but when you subscribe to a channel on Twitch, the Twitch streamer only gets half of that $5 that you spend. And I'm trying to raise money for this fundraiser, but when you subscribe to the channel or when you gift subs to the channel, I only get half of that money. Now I'm still matching that money, but your intention was to give $5 to the channel. You're actually giving half of that money immediately to Twitch, and then the other half comes to me, and then I pay tax on that money. But I'm still matching that $250. And so if you do like Bang Money in chat, you can go look at the full disclosure over here, where I disclose like all the money I make as a streamer, all the subs, all the gift subs, all the Prime subs, all the ads, all that stuff. So you can go check that out over on that site at your leisure. But I only get half of the money that you intend to spend on subscriptions. And so I made a new command called don't sub. If you want to subscribe to the channel because you want to get rid of that pre-roll ad, I get it. But that's also why I've got that long 4-minute intro song. So if you're joining in that first couple of minutes, you're not missing any content anyway. You're just sitting through like, a minute or 2 minutes of ads or however long those ads are, and then you're just listening to that hype music until I actually start the stream. But other than that, I don't do any other ads on Twitch. So if you really want to support the channel for the fundraiser, my ask is that you cheer bits or that you donate directly, because I get 100% of that money, or nearly 100% of that money. And that doesn't go into my pocket. It's all going into that fundraiser. And then I'm matching that money in the fundraiser. And so I think it's going to really speed up how much money we raise for that fundraiser if people just donate directly as opposed to subscribing. Initially, when I wanted people to subscribe to the channel, I was going to let you like own one of these light panels, and like, if Father Funk showed up, that one would always be blue or whatever, no matter what. But it turns out programming the nano leaf panels was a lot harder than I anticipated. And so I decided I was just going to 3D print these things. Right now we've got 28 subscribers, and I reach out to all the subscribers going, what logo do you want? And a few of them got back to me and said, this is what I'm looking for. And so I put those up. One subscriber sent me their logo, and it actually doesn't print well to hang. And then a few other people wanted the Maker Deck logo. If you're familiar with Maker Deck here on Twitch, it's a channel that streams mostly 3D printing. And it's also pretty fun to watch. If you're into 3D printing, you can just put it on the background. It's got looped music and whatever, and you can watch some interesting things 3D print. But I asked for like a silhouette version of that logo. I've been asking for months and nobody's making it. So I can't 3D print that logo. So I decided, you know what, I'm just not going to do the logos anymore. So I'm going to leave these ones up until these folks decide not to subscribe anymore. But as long as, let's see, we got Melaruru, we got Ethan's dad, we got Juggling Biohazards, and we got Father Funk 3D. As long as those folks subscribe, I'll leave their logos up. But I think instead, I'm going to find some other way of thanking you for being a subscriber. One thing that I'm thinking about doing is like 3D printing your name and putting your name on these little panels, like in between the lights, and see if I can get that on there in some way. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But I decided that as a Twitch user, what I'm going to do is I subscribe to Twitch Turbo instead. So Twitch Turbo is $9 a month. And if you think about it, if you're subscribed to 2 other channels on Twitch, you're already paying for Twitch Turbo. Twitch Turbo is $9 a month and you get no ads. And so if you're subscribing to a channel just to get rid of the ads, you're better off paying for Twitch Turbo and then just donating to that streamer instead, because they're going to get more money out of it than the subscription. So it's a little controversial on that, but my ask is don't subscribe to my channel. If you want to donate to the fundraiser, I would prefer that you just straight donate, and all that money is getting matched. So you can go check out this page right here. Got to get used to pointing when I'm looking at myself on a camera. You can go check out this link over here, and you can see full transparency over how I'm making my money as a streamer, how it's all going into a pot, and then I'm matching all that money. And back in June, we gave away $5,000 to a company, and we're going to do it again at the end of the year. And so this $1,500 is what I want to raise by the end of the year. And then starting in the new year, we'll have another goal for the whole year, and my employer is going to match another $1,500 of whatever we raise. So So yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then the other thing I set up was just this recurring, like these are Twitch channels that I watch on a regular basis, and recommend that you go follow these folks as well. I've tried really hard to limit these channels to be technology related, coding related, education related around tech careers and interviews and things like that, like people that do, interviews and or like mock interviews, resume reviews, all that kind of stuff. So. And I just realized I forgot one today, so I need to go find that channel and go add them in here as well. Just make sure I'm spelling it right. Yep. Cool. So I'm going to do a recurring shout out to Tiff Bites. And so that's Tiffany Chacha, who we had on the stream a couple of weeks ago, and we did a whole bunch of resume reviews. We did like 4 resume reviews. For tonight, we had half a dozen people or so send in resumes. And so we're going to be going through and reviewing those tonight on the stream. If you've got one and you want to send that in, you absolutely can. You can send it over on this webpage right here. So if you want to do that while I'm talking, the only thing I ask is that you anonymize your contact information. If you want to leave your name on there, you can. That's up to you. But I really recommend, like, don't put your real email address on there. Don't put your real phone number on there. Hey, Bash Moving, thanks for the subscription. Appreciate that. So yeah, we got the subscribe thing hooked up to the lights as well. So appreciate the sub. Know that all of that money is going into the fundraiser, and I'm also matching that money as well. So appreciate the sub. And so yeah, so we're going to go through a bunch of those resumes tonight. So if you want to submit one, you can. There's lots of time. We got 6 resumes to go through so far, and if you want to send in more, you're absolutely welcome to do that. I'll get through as many as I can tonight. So if you want to keep sending those in, go for it. Just anonymize your name. Well, if you want to. It's up to you if you want to anonymize your name. But I do ask that you anonymize your email address and your phone number if those are on your resume. Anonymize those details and then send over a PDF file, and I'll bring it on the stream and we'll go through some of those. Alrighty, we got a ton of people lined up on Sunday streams. We are now into early October for Sunday morning guests on the stream, and we've got like every other Thursday going now through, I want to say, like mid-September, late September, for the Thursday night streams. So I won't be having a guest on the stream all the time, but I do want to raise other voices and hear other perspectives as well. I've been in the tech industry a long time. I've been a hiring manager. I've been a director of engineering, all that kind of stuff. So I like to give advice. And if you've got questions, please drop those in chat as we go. You're absolutely welcome to drop questions in chat. As we saw earlier, I answered a question for somebody. I'm here to help, and I'm here to offer my perspectives and my ideas, but mine aren't the only ideas you should listen to. So I really recommend, like, find lots of people whose opinions you trust, where you can listen to their opinions and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's how I want to do things for my own career. I really recommend find several people like that you can go listen to, and then consolidate their advice, figure out how you want to move ahead in your career. Ultimately, it's your career. You have to advocate for yourself, and then go do that. And so don't ever just listen to my advice on how to build a resume. Go listen to other people about how to build a resume. Same thing with cover letters, same thing with interviews, all that kind of stuff. Baghead, good to see you in chat. You appear from the dark and hop into the stream. Good to have you here. First time chat from Bash Movin'. I just wanted to say thanks. Your resume feedback and the interviews I did with you on Interviewing.io really helped get a job at Twitch. Sweet, you work at Twitch. I got questions for you about the Twitch API. Hit me up. I got questions. I got so many questions. Like, why do you have 3 different APIs on 3 different kinds of platforms? Why can't you consolidate that into one API? But it's all good. I got 2 bots running right now. One to watch the chat and one to make the lights blink on the pub sub and the event handler. So, good times. No, I'm just kidding. Just giving you a hard time. But congrats on getting the job at Twitch. That's fantastic. I have a lot of fun on Interviewing.io, helping people out. It is a paid platform, so I do want to be transparent about that. It does cost money. They have in the past given away free mock interviews on their platform, but it is a really good place to practice and get advice from people who know what they're talking about. When you go to sites like Pramp, you do a mock interview with somebody, but you really don't know who you're getting paired up with. When you interview on a site like Interviewing.io, you're being paired up with people who actively do interviews at their companies, or who have a background in doing interviewing, who can give you legit advice on, this is what you did well, this is what you can work on, these are things that you're really great at, these are things that need work. and really hone in on what that advice is. And people through their platform, people are getting all kinds of like really great jobs. I recommend it, but it is an expensive platform. If you can afford it, great. If you can't, you can reach out to them. They'll actually defer payment on their interviews. But it really is a good platform. And if you want to contact me privately, you're welcome to do that. And I'll tell you like how you can talk to the support team about getting matched up with me if you do pay for interviews on there. I'm happy to like, you can just email the support team and say, I really want to get paired up with Ian Douglas. How do I do that? They'll make it happen. So if you have a specific interviewer in mind and you know them by name, the support team will do what they can to pair you up. But cool. I'm really happy to hear that you got that job at Twitch. That's great. Baghead says, I'm just messing with Midjourney. I just wanted to pretend to be doing something productive by watching you. Thanks, I guess. Thanks, I think. No, it's all good. Happy to have you here anyway. So yeah, so I've got like these recurring things going. I definitely recommend like all these folks that are coming through, Mike Chen, Finance Singularity, Tiffany, Tiff Bites here. This Sunday, we've got UK Mad LZ coming through on the stream. He's a developer advocate over in the UK, and he's going to be on the stream on Sunday. And really great guy, really fun to watch on his stream. He tends to stream kind of like late morning for us here in America, but he's a really fantastic guy to listen to, and he's got advice and ideas and things like that. And so we're going to hear from him and hear about his journey into tech and how he helps people out, and what his job is like as a developer advocate and so on. I know I've had a handful of folks on the stream who are developer relations, developer advocates, and I don't want to exhaust that by any stretch, but there are a lot of us here on Twitch, and so I wanted to kind of like cross-pollinate a little bit, but also hear lots of advice and lots of interesting things. We got lots of other people lined up on the Sunday streams from other parts of the world, like Vietnam, India, all over Europe. So we're going to have lots of really fun folks on the stream on Sundays. All those are going to go up on the YouTube channel. So if you ever miss, coming live and watching, that's fine. Why does Bang YouTube not work? One of my bots crashed. Oh, I took the YouTube one out of my bot, apparently. Okay. YouTube.com. Douglas. Cool. So you can go find my channel over there on YouTube. Make sure that I get that back online there later on. But yeah, you can go check out the YouTube archive. So if you ever miss like being here live, you can always go check out the YouTube archive. Every episode that I do, I put up there. On the streams where I have a guest on the stream, that goes into a playlist called like full episode or full session with guests or something. And then where it's just me, it's just, full episode or whatever without guests. So you can go check those out. Ian Bot will really post the YouTube links. That's right. What's up, RC Mania? Good to see you in chat. So yeah, so one of the things that I mentioned when I started the stream is I actually stopped subscribing to other people's channels. And I don't want to make Bash Movin' feel bad for subscribing. I do appreciate the sub, but in my mind, paying for Twitch Turbo to get rid of the ads and then directly donating to the streamers that you want to support is actually more cost effective for the streamer. Twitch is going to make money on ads as well. They keep a portion of that ad revenue. But if you pay for Twitch Turbo, you're kind of offsetting their cost of those ads, or like what they would otherwise make as revenue for those ads. And then directly donating to the streamer actually makes them more money. And again, for my channel, I'm not in this to make money. All that money is going into this fundraiser. And so I appreciate any help that you want to offer on that. You can do Bang Donate in chat over there, and you can see how to donate if you want to send money over PayPal, or you can go to the About Me section underneath my profile here on Twitch, and you can see how to do that. Baghead says, I'm thinking of going to college for computer science. Should I be taking any steps now? I'm a junior in high school. Awesome. Well, for starters, kudos for knowing what you want to do when you're older. I think it's a great start. In my mind, a CS degree sets you up for a very different kind of career than not getting a CS degree. And let me explain what I mean by that. Getting a CS degree is all fine and good. If you've got the time to go to a 4-year program and do all of that work and get your internships and so on, it's a great way to kickstart your career. It's a great way to get started. You can, in the long run, you can sometimes make more money than not getting a CS degree and going some other path and then learning how to code later. So I don't want to dissuade you from it. I think it's a great path. That's the path I took myself. I studied computer engineering. Mine was a 3-year program, but I did a year of electronics engineering, and then I did 3 years of computer engineering. But a CS degree sets you up for a different kind of role where you're learning about more of the internals of how the computer actually works and how and why the algorithm works the way that it does. Other online education and other schools and code schools and things like that, they're going to teach you how to use applications to go build other applications. They're going to teach you about frameworks and so on. In a CS degree, you're not going to learn as much, in my experience, around the idea of web development, API development, things like that. You may or may not learn about Git unless you're studying that on your own or you're using it as a project. Some universities do a better job teaching like the modern tool stack that you're going to use to actually go get the job. In my experience, though, I've interviewed a lot of folks coming out of college and university who have never done software testing. They've never done anything like Git, any sort of revision control. But they're amazing at algorithmic thinking, and they're amazing at knowing which data structure to use, and they're really good at honing in on a problem really quickly and solving the problem. But they don't necessarily know how to use React, or they don't necessarily know how to use, whatever framework for building out an API. Some programs, like I said, though, do a fine job at this. Some of them don't. And so I think if you're going to go for a CS degree, you want to look for a school that's teaching very modern architecture, very modern tooling, and don't go to a school just because the school has a big name. You want to make sure that you're learning modern stuff as well. I would say that's the biggest advice I can give you. If you really want to go for that CS degree, absolutely a great idea. Just make sure that they are teaching you modern technology and modern tech stack, and that they're not teaching you stuff that's 20 years old or more. Now, that said, a lot of the algorithms that we learn, a lot of the data structures that we learn are 20 plus years old. But I would say, like, when you're thinking about things like scalability and getting into things like message queues and pub subs and stuff like that, you want to get into a modern architecture. And having to learn that on your own after you graduate feels like a mad scramble of, I've graduated, I've got all this debt, I need to find a job, but now I've got to go learn all these tools. Going to a boot camp or something like that can help teach you those tools. So I have seen some people finish a CS degree and then go to a boot camp to like really ramp up in a hurry on the skills that they missed, and then get into the workplace from there. Depending on what kinds of internships that you get, you may have access to a lot of that kind of learning during an internship, which is fantastic too. Again, if you've got that kind of place in life and you've got the ability to talk to companies and go get that kind of job, that's absolutely a great way to go. So the nice thing about the tech industry is you really get to guide your career. However you want to run your career, whatever you want to chase, you can go chase that thing. And so my advice is CS degree is fine. Just make sure you're learning something modern. And when you get out, make sure that what you have learned through school and through your internships are preparing you well to enter the workforce and hit the ground running. Because like I said, a lot of CS degree programs, if you don't do internships, you're not going to learn some of those skills. And you'll find it just as hard to get a job as people that don't have a CS degree. Let me go back through chat here because I did miss a little bit here. No LZ, good to see you. Can confirm. Okay, cool. It's possible to go too far in either direction. Yep, that's true. I've never heard of a college teaching testing exactly. But there are companies out there who won't hire you if you don't have some amount of software testing. Like, yeah, they know that there's things that they're going to have to teach you. But the more of these skills you have when you come out of college or university, it's a bigger value that you bring to them as a company. And so they're more likely to hire you and more freely going to hire you because you already have that skill. There's less things they need to teach you to go get that job. So the more of that you can learn while you're in school, whether it's a side project or whether you get an internship, like however you're learning that stuff, if you have the time to learn and practice that kind of stuff, I recommend it. That's not always possible, though. A lot of people that are going to school, they've got to work a job to afford school and afford rent and living expenses and all that. And so you don't always have time for those side projects. You don't always have time to like go do, learn 10 more things while you're also in school. So it can be a lot harder for those folks. So there is a balance that you have to strike in there. I don't think you'd find an accredited school that isn't doing React. I don't think you'll find an accredited school that isn't doing React. It depends. I mean, it really depends on the schools and so on. Where do you put Python on that timeline? I mean, Python's a really old technology too. It's been around for what, 25 years or more. I mean, I've been using Python for quite a long time. I've been using it since, I don't know, 2005 or so. I'm not an expert at it by any means, but I've used it. You know, like all my scripting, like all the stuff that I do here at home is like 95% Python code and like 3% JavaScript and 2% like whatever else I need to get the job done. But most of the stuff I do is in Python every day. So, Rend, good to see you in chat as well. So Feisty Kitty says, I don't have a college degree at all. I'm currently a software developer writing automated test code for iOS apps in a big tech company. That said, I'm not entirely sure that today I could get hired at this company with the education experience I had at the time that I got hired 10 years ago. I'm not sure how hard of a requirement having a degree is for most companies, or if they tend to be flexible if you've got applicable experience or like a coding school or something. That's a great point. There are companies out there who will absolutely not look at you, like they won't even give your application like a moment's notice if they look over your resume and they see you don't have like a computer science, computer engineering, like some sort of programming degree of some kind. And the job post roasting that I've done on the stream, over the past couple of months, we've found a lot of companies where they're like, this is a requirement. You must have a CS degree. It's like, no, like for what you're outlining in your job post, they absolutely do not have to have a CS degree. Is it helpful? Yeah. Did they have to have a CS degree? No, not at all. Not at all. But a lot of companies don't get that. A lot of companies still think you have to have a CS degree, and it's a fallacy. And they're basically gatekeeping who they want to have come work at their company, because not everybody can afford a CS degree. Not everybody has the time to go through a CS degree. And they're just like, no, we don't trust any code school at all. There was a thing that hit the news recently about a code school who was promising like, oh, you come to our code school, we'll get you a FANG job and you make all this ridiculous money. They had like one student get a job at FANG one time. And they started advertising, and now they've opened a lawsuit against the school saying like, hey, you misled us. It's like $20,000 for the school and this short-term program to go learn coding in a couple of months, and you promised us a FANG job, because of how they worded, hey, if you come to our code school, you're going to get a job at, major tech company. And so they misrepresented what they were able to teach. And they said a lot of teachers were showing up to class and they didn't even know what to teach. Like, it was really unorganized, it sounds like. But the way that this one news agency put the article out, they made it sound like it's not possible from any code school at all to go get a FANG job. That's also not true. There are companies, or schools rather, and programs where you go to that program, you can absolutely get those jobs. But they also made it sound like if you go to a code school, you're not going to find any job, which is also completely blatantly false. There are code schools across the country that I've worked with where their graduates are getting jobs just fine. Some of those code school students, though, find it difficult to get jobs when companies require a CS degree. And so again, I think a lot of companies are missing out on really good people, really quality people, because they put that kind of requirement on there. And it's not a requirement. Like, it shouldn't be a requirement. You don't have to have a CS degree to get a good job in tech. So Feisty Kitty, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that. I agree that you shouldn't have to get a CS degree, but you're also correct in that a lot of companies, they are a little more firm and strict on their job requirements now. But over the last couple of years, we've seen companies relax on that. Like, a lot of FANG companies like Google and Apple, they used to require a degree, like a computer science degree, and they lifted that as a requirement. They're like, if you can code, you can come get a job here. Like, if you can code to the quality of standards and whatever that we look for in our software developers, then you can have a job. And so it doesn't matter where you went to school or if you went to school. If you can demonstrate you can do the job, you get the job. And that's a great way of thinking about it, because our interview process is all demonstration anyway. So who cares where you went to school? If you can demonstrate that you can do the job, you should get the job. That's my take on it. Let me go back to chat here. RC Maniac says, I think a paid internship in college is almost required. Otherwise, you need to do a lot more to meet the requirements, potentially. Yep. You missed the correction. I don't think you'll find an accredited school that is doing React and other frameworks. They teach generic stuff, so you can grab onto basically anything. Yeah. But a lot of code schools are going to teach you things like React or some kind of framework like Rails or Django or something like that, depending on the code school, because they're teaching you how to hit the ground running and be able to build a whole application. But you don't necessarily understand everything that's going on under the hood. Like, you know, you're using a hash, but you don't know why you're supposed to use a hash. Where the CS degree, they're going to teach you how to like construct a hash in your code by hand, you know, where you're writing out your own hash function and you're maintaining your own, you know, array of linked lists and like how the hash actually works. You're going to go construct all of that yourself in a CS program, but not in a code school. In a code school, they're just like, yeah, just use a hash. And so they're trying to speed things up by glossing over some of those details, because on the job, do you really have to know how a hash works? I mean, depending on what you're working on, knowing why you want to use a hash or not use a hash, or why you want to use an array over a linked list, like having knowledge about that kind of stuff can be beneficial. Is it required? Not necessarily. Nilsy, appreciate the follow. Thank you. Cool. Let's keep going through here. So yeah, appreciate the correction on that, RC. Me too. Good to see you in chat. Not all CS degrees are created equal either. I went to college, did the CS stuff for 2 years, didn't learn anything I didn't already know, and dropped out. Yeah, the code school that, or the code program that I taught at here in the Denver, Colorado region, we had people leave their CS program and come to our school. It was a 7-month program because they knew they were going to get into the job market faster and learn all of the stuff they needed. So their first year or two, they focused on a lot of algorithms and like operating systems classes. And then they came to Turing and they got out and they found a job just fine. So, you know, and I've helped people on the stream here with their resumes, and we're about to dive into the resume reviews here for tonight. I've helped people figure out, like, how do you word on a resume that you didn't actually finish a CS program, but you still want to show that you took some of the classes. And we may see some of that in resumes tonight. I didn't pre-screen them, so I haven't really looked at these resumes either. We're all going to see them kind of fresh here. So again, if you want a resume review, if you want to get that in on the stream tonight, you can send it over. Just go send it over to this link over here. The only thing I ask is anonymize your email address and phone number, because this is on the internet. I don't want to dox anybody. It's up to you if you want to keep your real name on there or not. You can remove all that if you'd like. But I do ask, like, don't put your real phone number and email address out there. And I'm not going to be clicking on links necessarily to go look at your GitHub and LinkedIn profiles or anything like that. So, what else did I miss? Be Gross Design, good to see you. Hello there. Watched one of your resume review videos in July. I'd be incredibly grateful if you could review my resume too. Yep, absolutely. Just go send it into that link. Yep, see the link. Awesome, cool. Yeah, send that over and I'll add it into the list. So let's get going on those. And as I mentioned too, like, if you've got other questions about tech and so on, absolutely put that in chat. We'll address those questions kind of as we go. And then after the session is over, I'm going to go in and I'm going to like clip out the little like the Q&A types of things and publish those as separate shorter videos and podcast audio and so on. And so you can also go check out like exclamation point podcast. If you ever want an audio only version of my Q&A, I do publish those on Podbean, and it goes out to like Apple Music and Spotify and so on. So wherever you're getting podcasts, just search for the Tech Interview Guide podcast, and you'll get a lot of audio samples of, you know, several dozen Q&A sessions that I've done. And it's just a single question and answer. So they're really, really short. They're only a couple of minutes long usually. Some of them are like maybe 10 minutes long, but most of them are like in that 3 to 5 minute range. So they're very consumable. So if you're just running around town or something, or you've only got a couple of minutes, you can still pick up like the occasional listen. I go through everything from behavioral to technical questions to, you know, how do I get a job in tech? What kind of resources do I recommend people go learn? All that kind of stuff. So you can go check that out. So you can do exclamation point podcast, or you can just go to the website. All the links are on the website too. All right, so I will keep an eye on the email account as they come in, and we'll see if other resumes come in. Otherwise, let's dive in on some resume reviews here. Go find. Where's that window? I moved all my windows around. There it is. And I've also got a handful of links that I want to share of interesting things that I found this week. And so I'll share some of those links before we actually get started on the resume reviews. So last session we did company research, and someone was asking like, how do I research, a company like Khan Academy? And so I was showing like a lot of, these are the kinds of, sites and resources that I use to go do research about companies. So you can go check that out on YouTube if you like. I've got like all the resumes that we're going to go through and review tonight. I've already got them loaded up here in these tabs. But I wanted to share a handful of other things that I found. So this person is actually a streamer here on Twitch, Kiki Impact, and they do a lot of leak code stuff. And there are a lot of folks, on Twitch that are doing leak code, but most of the time it's just them grinding on leak code. And so you're literally watching them figure out like, how do I want to solve this? And they'll chat back and forth with people in chat about how they're going to solve the problem. And then you kind of see them work through it and, does it work? Does it not work? And you watch their debugging process. This person, though, they actually walk you through why you want to answer it a particular way. And so it's like leak code, but with an education layer on top. And they've actually went through and they've actually solved a ton of leak code problems, and you can go find all that source code on here as well. So if you understand Python, they've got all their leak code stuff on here. So I'm going to drop that link in chat, and I'll be putting all these in the description down below. So if you're watching this on YouTube later on, you'll get all these links later on. The next one, this is a site that was recommended as well if you want other interview prep advice. What was interesting is this person put together a thing of like, these are the top 6 things that I see people do wrong in interviews. And the first one was like not having a goal. Like just saying I want a job at Google isn't enough. Like you need to know what kind of job you want. And it was interesting to kind of read through this going, yeah, I tell people that. Yeah, I tell people that. Yeah, I also tell people that. And so if you've been on my stream for any period of time, you're not probably going to get very much new on here, but just a TLDR, this is a lot of advice that I tend to give as well. Not building a consistent study habit, especially with leak code problems, you need to constantly kind of grind on patterns like over and over so that you understand the strategy and you have memorized the strategy for how to do a thing and not just memorizing a solution for something, which they make in another point later on. Trying to learn a new coding language is a big thing too. Like people are like, oh, I want to go interview, so I better go learn Python. It's like, no, you can interview generally in whatever programming language you want. If you happen to know Python or something, then it's a lot less code generally if you're gonna do interviews. But chances are pretty good that if you're interviewing for a particular job and you need a particular language, they're going to ask that you interview in that language, because if that's required for the job, then you need to demonstrate some amount of skill in that technology. And so, trying to learn a whole new technology in order to go interview can be problematic. And so most of the time, even if you've like, let's say I need Python to get that job, I'm going to go build a project in Python. But when I go to that interview, I'm going to say, you know what, I'm actually better at Ruby. Is it okay if I just do the interview in Ruby? Here's a project that I did. I'm still learning Python. I'm still getting up to speed on Python. And I know that that's a requirement for the job. But is it okay if I actually do my interview in this other technology? Just about every company is going to be fine with that. There are companies out there actually who will ask you to just pseudocode your answer. You're writing code in a Google Doc and they don't even care if it's syntactically correct. Google being that company, they'll ask you to actually code things in a Google Doc so you can't see like code completion and color syntax, and you can't actually execute the code to see if it works. Like, and they're still judging your code. They're still like, seeing the quality of your code, but they don't care that it's syntactically perfect. If something's a little bit off, they don't generally care that much. Memorizing specific algorithms, like, oh yeah, the knapsack problem, I've memorized that one, or I've put time into memorizing that. Well, you're not going to get the knapsack problem exactly as is at a tech interview. There are very, very few cases of that I've heard. When I taught at Turing, one thing that we did as a community coding exercise one day was Conway's Game of Life, and go figure out how to code that up, and then back-end students who were doing Ruby were asked to code it in Ruby. Front-end students learning JavaScript were asked to code it in JavaScript. And then later in the day, we said, hey, pair up with someone else and try to learn enough of their language to see how much of your code you can write in the other language, just as an exercise of like, how quickly could you pick up something new? And we had one student nope out of the day, and they're like, nah, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to go do something else. They went to a job interview, and the job interview was like, cool, so we got this algorithm we want you to write called Conway's Game of Life. And they're like, no. But that's the only time that I've actually heard of a company saying like, we want you to code up this really well-known algorithm that you've probably already studied. So memorizing specific algorithms, I think, is not a good use of your time. You need to understand the strategy of how to break a problem down and how to like break it down into small enough pieces that you can go solve those pieces. But if you're just memorizing like the actual code for a very specific algorithm, you're going to have problems solving something that doesn't exactly match that pattern. So kind of leads into this next one, memorizing solutions to known problems and then not getting help. Like reach out for help. Find somebody that you can mock interview with, whether it's Interviewing.io or Pramp or just someone else in the tech industry. If you've got a mentor, find somebody that can mentor you and actually walk you through some kind of mock interview process. That'll be way more helpful than just practicing on your own. So I'll drop that link in chat as well. RC Maniac says, I basically did every interview in Python because it removes a lot of boilerplate. It does. Google asked me to code Conway's Game of Life. I went, I know it exists, but I don't know it. In the interview, had to explain it so I could write it. Yeah, I mean, if they just say like, hey, go write me Conway's Game of Life and you don't know it, then that's on them. And they're a bad interviewer if they expect that you know that. You know, for example, like asking somebody at an interview, like, cool, we're going to solve tic-tac-toe. Like, I'm going to give you a tic-tac-toe grid and I want you to tell me who won. Or like figure out like, is the game over? And if it's over, who won? And if it's not over, whose turn is it? Well, that's all fine and good if you know what tic-tac-toe is. And you know the rules of tic-tac-toe. Like X always goes first. And so if you have an odd number of X's, then it's O's turn. Like you have to know these things in order to solve it. And if you don't know that particular game, if you're from some other country or something and you don't know that game, then it's unfair for them to assume that you have assimilated enough American culture to know all these things. So it's actually, that kind of question is inherent with bias, where they expected that you have memorized and learned those kinds of games or those kinds of algorithms. Kinja Sloth, good to see you in chat as well. Cool. So I wanted to show that one. And then this one I thought was really interesting. And it's a site called FangPath. I forget where I saw this, but I just found this one like within the last day or two. And somebody basically put together a website around how do we find hiring managers and recruiters. So we can come in here, for example, and we can say, I want to go find somebody at Sony. And I want to know if anybody does Python at Sony. Let's go see who's hiring. And it basically builds a Google search for you where they're scraping LinkedIn for people that maybe work at Sony who have the word hiring somewhere in there, like hiring senior front-end developers, and they've got like a skill or something. This might be a great way to find people to network with, but also to figure out like, is a company hiring for a particular kind of role? You may find some stuff on a Google search like this. Whether it's like fully up to date, I don't know, but I thought it was a really neat site. So go check that out if you want. I thought it would be a really neat way for people to kind of figure out like, how do we network? And it does open in another tab. And so you can always come back here and you can log in and you can save those queries and so on. But yeah, you can always come back in here and say, you know, I want to find like a data science role and I want it in the United States. So find out who's hiring. Cool. So it's looking for, you know, hiring data science. In this case, no results found. So Sony might not be hiring data science where it's in the United States. But Sony V is a senior technical recruiter. Whether or not they actually work at Sony, I don't know. But now I can click on their profile. In this case, it happened to be their exact name, but it doesn't look like they work at Sony. That's just part of their name. But I thought it was a really interesting sort of search engine-y kind of way to go find people to network with. So go check out that link. Go have a play with that. Hey, Zooey, good to see you in chat as well. We're going to have Zooey on the stream in a couple of weeks as well and hear about Zooey's path into tech. Looking forward to that chat. It's been a while since we've chatted just ourselves. So, Kinja Sloth says, I'm looking for mid-level React devs. Oh, you're actually looking for devs. Hey, everybody. If you're a mid-level dev and you know React, there's somebody in chat. Go harass them right now. Go give them a follow. Go connect with them. Kinja, if you're willing, feel free to drop like your LinkedIn and stuff like that. Like, how can people contact you and find you? I'm totally okay with you putting those kinds of links in chat for networking purposes to help people with those jobs. If you've got like a job link or anything like that, please drop that stuff in chat for us. We'll absolutely share those, and I'll share that on the YouTube description later on as well. You can advertise openings. If you are if you work for a company and you are like you have openings, or if you're willing to refer people in our community to that opening, yeah, go ahead and drop those links. I'm totally cool with that. Like don't just go find some random job like, oh, I heard that Joe and Bill's, React Shack is looking for a junior dev. Like, I don't care about that. But if it's a company that you work at and you're hiring, or if especially if you're like a hiring manager or a recruiter, absolutely drop those links in here for us. So yeah, Zooey, it might be worth like taking that last link for this Fang Path job and like share that back with your school. I think it'd be a great one to share around, especially for entry level devs that are trying to find those jobs. All right. Well, I promised you resume reviews. We've been going for 50 minutes already. You send the link on Discord. Yeah. Cool. So if anybody's here and you want to join the Discord, Kinja's gonna go put some stuff over there. And Joe and Bill's React Shack. I mean, you never know. You're gonna go apply to them right now. Oh, all right. I let the secret out. It says hot new startup. Cool. But yeah, feel free to join Discord. Kinja's going to put links in the Discord community for us. Fantastic. Cool. Noah's dropping links as well for Greenhouse, for Novus. SEI Novus. Oh, can I do a job post roast while we're here? Let's see what we got here. So our mission is a portfolio intelligence. I won't roast it too hard because you're here, but let's see what we got. So telling us lots of cool stuff about the company, our values. You're looking to join a fast-paced team that will mentor and support you as you take on challenging projects. Cool. You understand the deadlines and goals, even if self-imposed, are what help keep businesses succeed. Okay. That's not quite raising a flag, but it lets me know that you're pretty hard on deadlines. If deadlines are set, you need to hit those deadlines. You appreciate direct, unvarnished feedback. You know it'll help you grow, as long as it's done gently, as long as the company knows how to give that feedback in a kind and empathetic way. I'm cool with that. Also, the thought of deploying code to production several times a day excites you. Awesome. Continuous deployment's fantastic. You know it's better to fail fast than to never ship at all. Yep. You enjoy mastering your craft, but also love learning about technologies and tools. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. You don't take yourself too seriously, and you know the importance of bringing some levity to an otherwise tense situation. Yes, thumbs up on that one for sure. What you'll join our product team as a front-end engineer, developing the core Novus product called Alpha Platform. It will expose you to our rapidly evolving product suite, consistent opportunity. We're a small firm, so we need our engineers to take ownership of their projects. You'll do more than merely code to a wireframe. You'll help bring products from concept to production while solving distinct design, UI, and UX challenges. Cool. All right. So you will become an expert in our front-end stack. You'll learn about our back-end stack. But it's a front-end job, so why are you making me learn Scala and MySQL and AWS? It should be a full-stack job. If you expect me to learn back-end stack, like knowing how to communicate with the code on the back end is fine, but if I'm a front-end developer, I shouldn't have anything to do with MySQL. I should not be directly interacting with a database from front-end code. There should be several layers in between my code and that database. So sus on this one. Collaborate across entire org, including backend engineers, data ops, client services, product managers. This is fine. Develop expertise in a broad array of financial topics. Do I need to be an expert in those things? Knowing a little bit about them is fine, but I'm not going to be like a financial planner by the time I leave this company. Develop knowledge about a broad array of financial topics, I think would be good. I think expertise is setting a bar a little too high as far as what your expectation is as a company. My big concern so far is this second bullet point here. If it's a front end job, I shouldn't be expected to do back end, unless you're calling it a full stack role. But up here, you're saying front end engineer, not full stack. And up here, you're talking about UI, UX, and HTML, JavaScript. And I'm going to be an expert in your front end stack. So this tells me you're doing a whole lot of front end-y stuff. Estragoon, appreciate the sub. Thanks for that. But expecting that I'm also going to be able to work across the back end, I think is not great. Critical skills, at least 2 years experience in HTML5, JavaScript, with experience in web frameworks such as, this is great that you're not locking them like you must have this one particular thing. It sounds like you've kind of got your own. Web app layout and design using a CSS preprocessor like Sass, Stylus, and templating language like Pug, Mustache. Those are very popular. Continuous deployment or delivery. Yep. With tools like Cypress or Selenium for testing. Awesome. Love it. Love to see it. Hands-on experience, specifically Java, Scala, or SQL. Again, if you're a front-end developer, I shouldn't be doing Node. I shouldn't be worried about Puppeteer. Like, this is like a huge, like you just took me way off the freeway on this one. You see that meme where it's like skidding off the freeway for something. That's how I'm feeling about this. Personal interest in capital markets, finance, investing, even if you've never traded stock. I think, again, this is fine. If I'm going to build up knowledge about these financial areas, I think that that's fantastic. If that's a passion and interest for me, this is going to be a relatively safe kind of job in an economy where, financial services are going to be a necessary thing. I think that this is going to be a solid company. My worry, though, is the expectation around working on the back end. When you've clearly labeled it as a front end job, and your first several bullet points are all about UI, UX challenges, and you're going to become an expert in our front end stack. So overall, pretty good. Pretty good. I think some of it could be improved, but yeah, we'll give you some respect on that one. Appreciate you dropping that in our chat and letting me roast that. Not that you asked for a roast, but I appreciate it. Let's go back and see if they gave any feedback. By all means, roast it. All right, sweet. Interesting, 100% of candidates I've interviewed have asked, will I get a chance to do any backend? I mean, that's fine too. If they've seen this job post already, then they already know to ask that kind of question. But if I see a front-end job and while reading through that job post, it says I should also know backend, that's going to make a lot of front-end people not apply for the job. They're like, the people that are going to apply want to grow and learn and expand and all that stuff. Ship that code. Good to have you drop by the stream. Thanks for dropping in. We're just about to get to those resume reviews, so here's the link to send over that resume that Chrissy told me to harass you for. But yeah, interesting thought around that. So RC Maniac's asking, can I roast careers.fubo.tv? I will open the link, but I did want to get to resumes tonight, so we'll do that at the end if that's cool. Cool. So we shared a bunch of other job related things that I think were going to be really helpful. As I go through these resumes, I've got this Google Doc that I'm going to be doing some work in. And so you can go look at, what did I call it? Is it resume sample? Yeah. So bang resume sample. There's a Google Doc here that you can connect to. And this is going to put you in here. We'll start seeing everybody's cute little anonymized faces popping in here as you open that doc. We'll start seeing some anonymized people showing up in here. But what I'm going to do is, if I see something like, hey, let's restructure this a little bit, I'm going to copy and paste that in here, and I'm going to show you how I do that. And the reason that I'm making this document public, that you can all come in and view it, is so that you can see like how I do these things. But you can also click on File and make a copy and save a copy of this document to your own Google Drive, once we're done. If you make a copy now, I don't know that it'll update. I don't think it'll keep it synchronized. But I'm going to show you myself like how I might reformat some things or how I might reword some things. And we'll use this as kind of a live doc to demonstrate some of that as we go. The last one that I wanted to show was this code triage. This is one that I heard of just today. I think it was on Cassidy's stream. So this is kind of an interesting sort of open source kind of thing. If there's open source technologies that you want to learn and you're looking for a project where you can grow and get some practical, experience working on open source, some of these things have, these repos got issues, 6,000 open issues, 5,000 open issues. These open source maintainers would love some help. So if you're looking for an open source project of some kind, there's a lot of stuff on here, 109 pages, and there's probably 50 things per page. A lot of open source projects here. So if you're looking for something else, feel free to do that. Appreciate other people dropping links for helpful stuff in here as well. Cool. Well, let's get into those resumes. So again, if you want to drop one in my mailbox, you can just go use that link up above and send it over. The only thing I ask is anonymize your phone number and your email address, and it's up to you if you want to anonymize your name. So let's dive in. All right, so this first one, let me zoom in. Well, let me zoom out. I like to start on a zoomed out kind of like how's the overall like use of the site, and overall space on the page. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to pull up notes on these as well. So this person said, I've read that instead of writing the tech stack we use, we need to know how our projects have impacted the users. So for projects with no users, what should we include? So this comes back to a piece of advice where I was saying, like, when you have bullet points on your resume, as a hiring manager, I want to know what was the impact that you had while working on this project. But if you're brand new in the industry and you don't have any users, but it's a project that you built, or, like students at your code school used it, and so you got like 6 people on your site or whatever, you can't really show much in the way of impact. So what do you say instead? I mean, there's no impact to have been had. And so it's okay not to have impact. But if you know what the impact was, especially with work experience, what you want to do on the resume is you want to tease me into thinking if I hire you, you're going to have that impact at my company too. And so that's why I, as a hiring manager, I like to see a lot of impact statements on the resume as far as like how what you built made a difference. So they had an internship at ThoughtWorks. They're currently there, which is great. Looks like they were just putting in their zip code, which I think is okay. Maybe that meant to be a phone number, but if it is a zip code, I would probably take any kind of location off the resume completely, especially if you're working remote. At best, you could say, like, I work in Pacific time zone. They don't have to necessarily know at this stage exactly where you live. So you could just put what time zone if you're expecting to work remotely. If you put a location on here, it can do one of two things. One, it can let a company know that if they're looking for people in that area, that you already live there or that you expect to live there. But two, it can subject you to geographic bias. If they expect you to work at their office and you live somewhere else, they know that they've got to pay to move you. And they could just be like, nah, they kind of have the skills, but we don't want to have to pay them to move and also teach them. Like, again, it's a barrier to entry thing. And it could subject you to bias right out of the gate. And you have no idea why, but they just say nope, and you don't get a phone call. And it's really hard to prove. It's hard to prove that they've biased against you for that reason. So I always tell people, don't put location on your resume unless you need them to know that you already live there. Like if I'm looking for a job in Denver, I'll put Denver on my resume so that they know they don't have to relocate me because my phone number is Pasadena, California. I don't want them to think that they got to move me out here from California. And so I would say Denver, Colorado, and then my phone number. But other than that, I leave my location off the resume completely. I demonstrated an understanding of design principles. I would take like any sort of personal pronoun off the resume. This is about you. So yes, you can just say demonstrated an understanding of design principles. You can take out the words in my project. So demonstrated an understanding of design principles, comma, successfully implemented the project with TDD. You could even take the word successfully out of there. It becomes a little bit redundant. If you're showing me that project, then I assume that you've done this stuff successfully. But you haven't really told me what the project is. You told me that you're at ThoughtWorks. It was an internship, but then you're talking about the project. But you haven't told me anything about the project. You worked as part of a team to develop the application using Spring, Boot, and React. We utilized pair programming approach to ensure high code quality. But you didn't tell me, like, what did you build? Like, is there something about this that you can tell me what you built aside from just the tech stack? Like, I worked on a Spring Boot / React full stack project using TDD and pair programming principles. I could put that into a single bullet point. I could whittle all this down into a single bullet point. But you haven't really told me like what you built. Now, for non-disclosure reasons, you might not be able to tell me, and that's okay too. Small Beautiful Asian, appreciate the follow. Thank you for that. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well. Got Kisu in the chat here as well. Robooso, good to see you too. Talentica, another internship. So it's great that you're showing internships here. Also, your internships are back to back, which is fantastic. Here you're doing 3-letter month, but here you're no longer doing a 3-letter month. So I would stay consistent with that, and I would do like JUL for July and JAN for January. You've got an extra space in between here. It's a little hard to see maybe on the screen unless I like really zoom in. But you've got a little bit of extra space here, so it's not a huge thing, but It's a consistency, like attention to detail kind of thing. Perform functional testing and manual testing to ensure that product performed as expected. Automated the testing for 2 features using Protractor. Okay. 1 second, everybody. I just need to mute my microphone for a sec. Sorry, I'm back. And then Glorio product development. So lots of internships for work experience. I think that's great. Perform development activities with minimal direction. Shows your self-starter. That's great. Ensured accurate tracking, reporting of issues related to front-end processing. Contributed to user experience improvement by suggesting and planning new features. So this is showing like what you did. And in some cases, what your impact was. Your impact was you contributed as an intern. That's fine. You don't necessarily have to say I contributed to 5 features. In this case, they are saying that they contributed to a few things. But, you know, as far as impact goes, what was that impact? You know, what did you make better by doing this stuff? Sometimes you're not going to have answers to those things. Other project work, these look like maybe just personal projects, ration card system in India for grocery distribution. I like that you're giving me that user empathy of like, this is what the project was all about. I think that that's fantastic. It's a great thing to put on a resume aside from just, I built a thing using React, or I built a thing using this tech stack or that tech stack. Tell me what the app is even about. Tell me what it was for. Like, who does this serve? It lets me know that when I hire you, you're going to care about the end user as well. So give me some kind of like user statement. Clear thoughts helps you speak more clearly and confidently. Just again, watch out for grammar on that kind of thing. Focused on the design of the website, making it more interactive. Ensure clean code practices. So reading through this makes it sound to me like this was something you contributed to. And so I might want to see on here, like, was this a group project or a solo project? And if it was a solo project, focused on the design of the website and making it more interactive, makes it sound like it already existed and you improved the interaction. But did you author this? Like, I don't know whether this was a solo project or a group project. And so I like to call those kinds of things out on a resume. We'll get into that in a little bit. Good GPA. So you know, they mentioned India earlier. So India has a GPA of 0 to 10. In the United States, it's 0 through 4. I generally recommend like put the GPA on there if it's a really high GPA. If it's not like really high, you can leave the GPA off. Again, with the dates, stay consistent with, if you're going to do the 3-letter month, use that everywhere on here. Participation and achievements. You changed up your bullet points. So again, consistency. It's like, why are these bullet points differently? And then you're going back to these little arrows that you had up here. I would just use like round bullet points and not get into the different sorts of icons. One thing that I'm not seeing on here is like an overall skill set of, I know this programming language and this programming language, I know this framework, I've used Git, I've done, you know, like I can kind of scan through this and go, okay, you've done Spring Boot, so Java, you've done React, so JavaScript, but you haven't actually called out those keywords here. And so if I was searching through my database going, you know, find me a Java developer who knows JavaScript, your resume is not coming up. So you need to put a skills block on here that kind of breaks down, like, I know these languages, these frameworks, these tools. Like, have you worked in databases? Have you done any kind of deployment? Like, do you know about AWS or not? Like, where have you put these projects online? Have you ever deployed anything online? Like, tell me a little bit more about the skills that you bring to my team. As a hiring manager, that's the first thing I look for. Personally, I like to see that as the very first thing at the top of the resume and then the work experience. Having the participation and achievements on here, I think this kind of stuff is great. Like, you're really into hackathons, you're really into, you know, like team-based events, and that's fine, but I don't know what you're capable of aside from like a couple of keywords on your resume. So handful of things there that I would improve, but I would definitely get a skills block on there. So yeah. Cool, let's dive in on resume number 2. So we'll go look at the notes on resume number 2. And it's, this person actually left their name on their resume. I'm a full stack software engineer. I just want to receive some suggestions and better ideas on how I can structure or what to improve on my resume. Cool, let's dive in. So they went with kind of a white gold sort of theme on here, and I think that's fine. And they knew that their contact information was going to be on the resume. They actually checked a checkbox saying, I'm cool with you showing it as is. I generally recommend don't do that. One thing that I noticed when I kind of zoom out on this, it's a long resume. The layout is pretty good, but there's a lot of gaps of space on the page that they could have filled up a little bit better. The font size is also really large for a resume. Could they have trimmed this down to a single page resume? Depends on how much experience they have. We're going to dive in on it a little bit. I only looked at this long enough to go, oh, cool, white, gold sort of color scheme, and that they had their contact info on there, but I haven't pre-screened any of these resumes. Again, if you want to get in on the resume review, feel free to send it over to this link, and I'll be watching that email account as we go tonight. And then, they got awards and interests and activities. So we're going to go through some of this stuff here. So they've got like social profiles down at the bottom, languages that they speak, and so on. So we're going to dive in on a lot more detail here. All right. So first off, this header is taking up a huge amount of space on the page. I would shrink this kind of stuff up quite a lot. Profile summary. If you need room on the resume, this is the first thing to go away. I would get rid of this. From here, they kind of break down high-level skills around like customer advocacy, active listening, open-minded. There are some people who are looking for like what we would call soft skills as keywords on a resume. I'm personally of the mind that you don't have to. They'll figure out during the interview process that you have those skills or not. But that's me and my take. If you feel like you need that on your resume and you want to highlight that on your resume for the kind of role that you're applying to, go for it. I don't think that there's a problem with it, but if it's taking up space where you could have something more valuable on the page, do that. Seeing the number of years that they've spent on particular technologies, I kind of go back and forth a little bit on this. Here's why. When I see the years on here, my first question as a hiring manager is, were you doing the same thing in PHP and Laravel for all 3 of those years, or was it a progressive sort of building of that skill? Like, can you do more in PHP now than you could 3 years ago? I also don't know how long ago you did PHP. Like, PHP and Laravel have been around for a long time, especially PHP. So I don't know, is this like a recent 3 years of experience? Is this an old 3 years of experience? Like, I've got a decade of PHP experience too, but it was from like 1998 to 2008 when I stopped ever doing any more PHP, and I never want to touch it again. That's just my preference. So I don't even put PHP on my resume anymore. But I've got a decade of experience. I could put that on a resume. It might look impressive to somebody, but for me as a hiring manager, I don't care so much about seeing how many years that you've got. I do care that this person is listing a lot of great skills on here that I think are really helpful to a company and really showcase, I know these languages and I know these technologies. What I would do here instead, though, is I would put these technologies in a more, like in a better grouping than the way that they've done it here. They haven't listed it like in descending number of years. They haven't listed it alphabetically. They haven't listed it like all the languages and all the frameworks and then all the other technologies. They're like, it's just kind of this mishmash of skill. And so I've got to go through and figure out, okay, well, which databases did they use? Like, they've got MySQL here, but then they got GraphQL down here. They got Postgres up here. Like, put all your databases together, put all your languages together, put your frameworks and stuff like that together. Get rid of these vertical bars between Git and GitHub. Like, that's not helpful. So, you've got React.js here with 6 years, and then React MUI for 2 years. Okay, so different like React libraries and so on. So here's our first demonstration of where I'm going to go highlight a bunch of stuff and paste it into that other document. But one thing that I'm noticing as I'm highlighting stuff on this page, watch what happens is I'm highlighting the word React and I drag down the list. Notice that in between these 2 lines, it suddenly highlighted everything under the education section as well, which tells me that however this person made their PDF, it hasn't formatted it very well. In fact, if I copy all of this text, if I put all that text in that Google Doc, look at what happened. We have software engineer with all the space in between each of the letters, which means engineer is not going to show up as a keyword because it's got all these white space in between. And then Kigali City has all the spaces in between each letter. Rwanda does not, except Rwanda got broken up as a word into 2 words. Their name is all split up into individual characters and so on. And so this is how an applicant tracking system is scraping your content and looking at it in its database. So are we going to be able to find content? In this case, MySQL ended up all as a single word. Spring Boot all ended up as as a single word. But notice what happened here. We've got Next.js and then open-minded, Prisma, SQLize, MySQL, and then we're back into the soft skills of active listening, Spring Boot, and then suddenly high school degree in software engineering. And then we're back into the skills of Express.js, Nuxt, and so on, time management. Then we're into TypeScript, and then you're into mentoring, but then you're back into unit testing. And so however this thing built that PDF file, it completely mangled it. And applicant tracking systems aren't going to be able to parse this resume well. Yeah, Zooey hit it in chat. Like the format just got screwed up. And it's how this particular resume got exported as a PDF. This is how your applicant tracking system is actually reading your resume. And so that's actually a really good check. If you're curious how an applicant tracking system is going to read your resume, just pull up your PDF. If you're on a Mac, hit Command A. If you're on Windows or Linux, hit Control A. It's going to highlight all the text. Copy, and we're going to paste that into the document. And now we see exactly what the applicant tracking system is going to see. In this case, their name, maybe that phone number, maybe that email address. Immediately into that work experience, we see the company and the date. They're an intern, and then the bullet points of, everything that they did, and then moved on to the next internship role and so on. Like, this is all sequential top to bottom. This is how you want an applicant tracking system to scan your resume. Applicant tracking systems aren't super intelligent. They're not, they don't work visually. They're not going to be able to see oh, these things are actually in a column. Let me go read that as a column of data. No, it's like reading all of this as text, but it's all mashing it together. It's blending it all together, and your format just got jacked up. I'm not going to spend the time to go through here and copy and paste each of these directly. So what I would say is if you're going to do this kind of stuff for a skills block, here's how I would build a skills block. I would do languages, and in this person's case, they had they had PHP, they had JavaScript, they had TypeScript. TypeScript has a capital S, by the way, so make sure that you're capitalizing things properly. In this case, they had MySQL and Postgres. So I'm going to throw SQL in as a language. Just curious if they had anything else on here as a language. No, doesn't look like it. So they had all of these things. They had SQL. Maybe they've got HTML and CSS. And then we could do libraries or frameworks or something like that. So we could do frameworks. And then in here, we're going to list Laravel and React and Node.js. And again, you want to make sure that you're spelling things out it should be React.js, Node.js. What other frameworks do we see on here? Spring Boot, Express.js. So Spring Boot, Next.js, and so on. And then we can get into other libraries. These other libraries are going to be things like Mongoose, and then the testing libraries, if you got Mocha, if you got Chai, things like that. You'll list out those libraries, and then maybe other tools. And this would be where you'd list Git and GitHub. Maybe you want a whole separate entry for databases. In this case, they've worked with 3 different databases. And so splitting those up into Postgres, MySQL, and GraphQL is totally fine. But this is how I would break up a skill block so that they can very clearly see what programming languages do they know, what frameworks have they used. They can see that in a much easier way instead of having to scan through that list several times to try to figure out find a logical pattern to everything that you know. Because again, they didn't group it by the number of years. They didn't group it by, the technology types. It's all really mashed together. GitLab is a capital L, I think. AWS, so GitLab, that could go in with Git, GitHub, GitLab. So again, try to figure out where these things fit, and I would do it as a whole skills block in this format. And if you're looking to add other things in bold, you could bold these subheadings if you want. Or the other thing you could do is if there are particular technologies that that a company is looking for in their job post, you can come in and say, oh, you wanted people that knew TypeScript and Postgres. So, use bold in this fashion like hot sauce. You don't just pour hot sauce on everything. If you do, you're ruining the effect of hot sauce. Hot sauce is sprinkled on to like have more impact because less is more. And you want to do the same thing with if you're going to throw bold tags on here. Less is more. You only want bold on a couple of things. You don't want to throw bold on all of the keywords because then it loses the effectiveness if this whole thing is bold. It has no effect. And so be careful about like how much bold or italic and styling that you do on these things. But you can throw bold on things if a company is looking for it. But what I recommend, instead of throwing bold on individual terms, if they're looking for a TypeScript developer, then what you want to do is you want to move TypeScript to the beginning of that line. Oops. You want to look like a TypeScript developer who happens to also know PHP and JavaScript and all these other things. If they're looking for somebody who knows MySQL, you're going to move MySQL to the beginning of that line and say, I'm a MySQL developer who happens to also have used Postgres and GraphQL. And so this is where customizing the resume on a per company basis is also important. And so the recommendation I tend to make on the stream, you've heard me say this a bunch if you've been here, make a really big resume, every skill, every project, give me lots and lots of information. But when you go to customize that resume for a particular company, you're going to take off the projects that that company doesn't care about. You're going to take off maybe some of the skills that that company isn't going to care about. And you're going to move these skills around to really promote the things that that company really wants to see. If they're looking for a TypeScript developer, the first project I see on your resume better be a TypeScript project. If it's not, are you really a TypeScript developer? That's what's going through my mind. Like if your TypeScript project is like way down at the list, like way down at the bottom of your list of projects, or there isn't one on there at all, then I'm left to wonder, well, you claim to know TypeScript, but I don't actually see it anywhere else on the resume. So like how or where have you actually used TypeScript? So make a really big resume. When you go to apply for a job, you make a copy of it and you trim it back down to 1 page or 2 pages, depending on how much content you want to have. And you're going to take away stuff that that particular company is not going to care about. Trying to build the one perfect resume that you can give to everybody doesn't always work. We can tell as a hiring manager that you've built a more generic resume because it's not tailored to what we're looking for. If you only know a couple of skills and that's what our company looks for, then it looks like you've tailored it to us. And so if you're an entry-level dev and you only have JavaScript and React and tools like that, and that's what I'm looking for, then it looks like you have highly tailored your resume and that's perfect. But if you happen to know a lot of different languages like this person does, then you may want to trim away some of the stuff that other companies aren't going to care about. If they don't do any PHP or Laravel, I would take it off the resume here. You know, or if you can, like as you're researching the company, if you see they've moved away from PHP, I would probably take it off the resume too. Maybe if they've still got some legacy systems around, you could say, I happen to also know PHP, or you could bring that up in the interview and say, hey, I noticed that you actually moved on from PHP, just FYI, I have some PHP in my background. If you ever need someone to go back into legacy code, like I can poke around it and have a look around. Is that something to promote on a resume? I mean, it depends on the company, and it depends on what you're finding as you're networking with those companies and as you're researching those companies. But that's how I'd build a skill block. So again, if you want to follow along on this, there's a command for that. You can do !resume sample in chat, and it'll get you to this Google Doc. And you're welcome to like grab any content out of here as we work, or you can just make a copy of it at the end of the night. So I'm going to leave all this stuff in here as we go. Aside from that, I'm okay with the gold color, but you need to figure out like how you actually formatted this resume, because whatever built this PDF file messed it up. Some of their education is just years. Some of what they do includes months. I would try to stay consistent on that. Usually for graduation dates, you would only put the date that you actually graduated. In this case, high school and secondary schools, you could probably leave some of that stuff off the resume. In this case, I would leave this school on because you were studying software engineering. But other than that, they're not going to care like where else you went to high school, but they are going to care about the fact that you learned software engineering. Like, where did you actually learn software? From here, you've got professional work experience, which I think is fine. In that case, your work experience is kind of better than your education. So I would move this education down to the bottom and promote the work experience instead, because you've got full-time work experience as a developer. So that should kind of lead, you know, the charge here as we go. The other thing that I notice is if I copy and paste this over here, it lost all the formatting, so it made everything 11-point font. But when I look over this resume, this font looks much bigger than 11-point font. And it's also kind of a non-standard font. I don't think it's Arial. It might be Arial or Helvetica, but it doesn't look like a standard sans serif type of font. I would just highlight everything on here, make everything the same size, make it all 10-point font. And then I usually go back and I make these headers like 12-point font, maybe 14-point font, and your name at the top is maybe 18, but this name feels gigantic, especially with this big margin at the top. If anything, I would move that margin up to the top and I would reformat some of this contact information. So what I'd like to do in Google Drive, when I get ready to build a contact block like this, on the very first line, I go in here and I say I want to insert a table, and I make a two column, 1 row table. And then because we can't get rid of that blank line, I shrink that down to 1-point font. The other thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go into my page setup and I'm going to change my margins. I'm going to make my top margin 0.5. I'm going to make my bottom one 0.5, and I'm going to make my left and right 0.6. That gives me a little more room on the page. From here, not sure why that went down to another page, but we'll figure that out. Okay. So now that contact block is going to be right up at the very top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my name in here and the title that I call myself. So I'm just going to say like software engineer, or I'll throw senior software engineer on here. And then over here, I'm going to have my phone number. So I'm just going to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Please don't text me. And then Ian at example.com. And then what I might do in here is I might have like linkedin.com in Ian Douglas 736. So I'm not going to write out the whole URL with the protocol and www, whatever. But I do tend to write out my URLs like this. Not always, but sometimes I can, and say GitHub Ian Douglas. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to right justify all of these. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to make that right justified. And then I'm going to bring this column over here. I'm going to come back and I'm going to make my name like 18 or 20-point font. I'm going to make my title the same size as my headers. So I'm going to make that like 14-point font. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to modify my table a little bit. I'm also going to bring this stuff down to 10-point font because I want all of my content on the page to be 10-point font. I'm going to come in here, and now what I want to do is I want to click on the table itself, and I want to find the table properties. And I'm going to go into alignment here, and I'm going to set the cell padding to 0. That's going to push everything right up against those edges. Now it only did it for that one cell, so I need to make sure that I do it in this cell as well. So I'm just going to click on the cell while I'm in that edit mode, and notice it mashed all that text right up against the edges. And now I can come in here and I can also change the color, where I make that border 0, and I set it to white just in case. And there's my header block for my resume. And now I've compacted that up at the very top as best I can. And it's up, it's out of the way, and I've got the whole rest of that page for everything else. And so if you've got like a big, giant honking header like this on the page, you just shrunk all that stuff down, and you've given me LinkedIn and GitHub and whatever. They've got theirs way down at the very bottom. It might be better to put that up at the top if they're going to be looking at those kinds of things to contact you. Is a Twitter account helpful? It's helpful if it's part of the role, or if you tweet about technical things. If you tweet about like political things or political unrest, or, you know, critique about the government, you know, or all you tweet about is cat pictures or whatever, it's not helpful to somebody that's trying to hire you. So again, take off the stuff that's not useful to that company. Just remove it completely. So I haven't looked through any of their stuff to know if that would matter to them. Again, when it comes to these languages, I would put that in the skills block at the top. Spoken languages, English, Kiswahili, you know, whatever these are. Recent projects, it's fine that these are domain names, but tell me about them. Like, what are they? Like, why do I even want to click on them? I'm just going to pull one up just at random here. Okay, visual programming visual programming language for machine learning. Cool, it's beta. It's a nice looking website. It's professionally done. I think it looks fine. And I can see immediately when I load up this thing, like, what is this project even for? I've been to so many projects where it's like, you know, I built this project, and you go and they're like, I built this thing in React, but you don't actually know what the thing does. Or the first thing you're hit with is a login page. It's like, you have to log in before you find out anything at all. Like, show me on that landing page, like what is the project, like entice me to sign up, entice me to log in. Like, why do I even want to log in? What is this site even all about? So I like that they're calling that kind of stuff out. So having a list of links on the page is fine. But I would want to see a little bit more about like, what are these projects? What are the technologies? Because again, they've got this whole technology list up here. But if I search the page for TypeScript, I only see it one time. I see one hit up here in the search bar. So you claim to know TypeScript, but I don't see anything else on the page that tells me how you've done TypeScript. Did you do it in Angular? I don't know. Like, I'm left with more questions than I have answers for by looking at this resume. So handful of things there to consider. Let me go back through chat. I know I missed a whole bunch of stuff coming by. I feel if a job goes, we want 3 years of experience or 2 years of X or Y, then that style is good. Yep. But if a company knows we want you to be skilled in X, but Y is good, then it doesn't entirely work. Yeah, good point. Shutters at Pivotal Tracker. I mean, I like Pivotal Tracker. It was a good tool until they went to their paid platform, and you had to start paying for using it. Cool. Me too. I see that you disagreed with RC Maniac in chat, and that's great. I think it's healthy and productive to have disagreement as long as it's respectful. And yeah, again, my opinion, Maytu's experience and opinion, RC Maniac's opinions. It's good to hear lots of opinions over this stuff. And so as we're going through these resume reviews, if you're paying attention to chat here, you'll kind of see other people's opinions and stuff as we go. Feisty Kitty says, having looked at a few job posts for my team over the last couple of years, been involved in interviewing, I can say in my experience, the requirements listed are more like guidelines. They have to put something on there, but often it's very flexible if you can demonstrate that you can still do the job. Yeah, I agree. What else did I miss? A person's skill level isn't determined by the number of years they've spent working on technology. Exactly. I want to see that there's been a progression in that skill over that period of time, not just I've used this thing for 5 years. Because it could be, well, I used it 5 years ago and I used it last week. So, have I been using it for 5 years? I mean, or did I use it for a month over there and a month over here? So really I've got 2 months of experience, but I used them 5 years apart. So do I have 5 years experience or 2 months experience? Again, it's a very subjective thing to put timings on there, or you see people with like 4 out of 5 or like 8 out of 10 or whatever. It's like, what does that even mean? Ship the Codes said these are the stories I love to hear. Yep, awesome. Slabrisk, the Dragon statement was awesome. Cool. Glad it arrived in one piece. Glad that you liked it. I've got 2 more to send, and then I've got the ones that failed. I still have to send those out. So if you're in chat and I owe you those, I still have to get those out. Cool. Let's move on from here. So the third one, nice and colorful. So again, if we zoom out on this one, pretty good use of space on the page, but we got this big block of empty space up here in the top right corner that maybe could have been used a little bit differently. But overall, I don't mind the blue and the white, keeping in mind that visual contrast, our eyes are going to be led to a different kind of contrast based on what we're used to reading and what we're used to seeing. For me, I'm used to reading dark text on light background, and so my visual acuity of when I read something, I'm going to read your name, and then I'm going to immediately come down the right side of this page, and I'm probably going to miss a lot of detail on the left. So when I'm just scanning this over, especially because it's a 50-50 split, you're telling me that both of these columns have equal importance. And as I'm reading, it's like, well, do I read the left side or do I read the right side? And I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, and I'm only going to pick up half of each column's worth of information as I'm trying to piece everything together of should I call you. I've heard secondhand, so it's not my direct experience, but I heard secondhand from a recruiter that when applicant tracking systems see multiple columns, their expectation is that whatever is in the left column is less important than what's in the right column. So in that left column, you would put like maybe the education or volunteer work and things like that, where the right column would be like your hard skills that are applicable to the job. I haven't heard that from any other recruiter, but it was one piece of information that I picked up a couple of years ago that kind of stuck with me. So again, if you're doing a multi-column resume, You may want to verify this with tools like jobscan.co and so on, but try to make that left column thinner and put more content in the right column. Do some A/B testing, see if it helps. Cool. Let's dive in a little bit. I would lose the icons. I know that that's a phone number. I know that's a location. I know that's an email address. You don't need the icons on here. Knowing that that's your Twitter account, I guess is helpful. So Kisu, hey, Kisu's in chat right now. So we're looking at your resume. Having the URLs spelled all the way out here, I think is fine. Again, I think you could drop the protocol in the www and just have like just the thing here. But again, if you want to stay with the icons, then I think you just have the icon with your username, the same way that you did for Twitter. And you could do the same thing for GitHub. Otherwise, why did Twitter get left out? Like, why not do twitter.com/username? You changed up the formatting on me. So it was the design that your wife chose. All right, you're gonna throw your wife under the bus for this one. No, I'm just kidding. Like I like the blue. Don't get me wrong, I like the blue, and I like that the headers are a slightly different contrast. Kind of makes those headers stand out a little bit too. I think that's fine. But yeah, I would say like make these things consistent. So if you're going to spell out these URLs, that's fine, but spell out the URL for Twitter as well. Oops, didn't mean to pull up your GitHub there. Clicked on it by accident. Skills block, I would probably format a little bit differently because again, you've got this skinny little column as part of a much wider column. I think you could go horizontally across this space and use that space a little bit better. You might have a little more room for either other coursework that you've done, or what I would probably do is move your project work over to the right side where you can expand a little bit more about what you did in those projects and put your coursework in that left column. So that way your coursework and your education are in the same place, where your project work and maybe your professional experience, because you've done some software, you've done some graphic design, like that's sort of tech adjacent. That way all of that is all in the same column. So that way you're keeping everything in sort of similar groups. So put all your education in one column, put all of your project and experience in another column. That would be one thing to think about there. Lots and lots of online courses as far as like how you've learned things. And I think that this shows a lot of initiative that you've gone through, and you've gone through and learned all these things and completed all these things. I think that that's fine. Not everybody has the time and the privilege of going to a university, or, not working and going to like a full-time boot camp or something like that. So this shows that you've got a lot of initiative and that you've spent time and you've put in a lot of effort to go self-teach a lot of this information to yourself and still work on projects. So the fact that you've got a lot of project work, I think is fantastic. What I would probably do though is over here, have your skills, have your projects, have your work experience under that. And then on the left one, you've got your language, you've got your coursework and other education. That's how I would reformat that a little differently. As far as the projects go, you've got the name of the project. It looks like you link over to where these actually are hosted on. Looks like this first one's on Netlify. And then you're giving me a little bit of information. So you built a web app for a movie search with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, movie database, API, and Illustrator. So you're giving me a little bit of like, what does the user do? But you're telling me more about like, this is the technology that I used. I think if you move this stuff over to the right side, you'd have a little more room to expand on, this is what the project is about. These are the tools that I used, and maybe something interesting that you learned while building the project. Like if this was the first time that you had worked with any kind of API, the first time that you consumed a RESTful API, mention that in a bullet point. It lets me know that, oh, this is what you took away from that project. You learned something by building out this project, and this is what you learned. So again, it's showing the impact. So we talked about that with the very first resume. Like, how do you show impact on a resume? Especially when it's a project, if you're still trying to find work, that would be the impact. I built this project so I could go learn a particular technology, and that's my takeaway, and that's the value that I bring to your company. You used a tool called Flow CV. Cool. I'd capitalize the E in front end or hyphenate it as front end. Yeah, I would too. I'd make that a capital E. I don't know if I would hyphenate it, but I would make it a capital E. But so yeah. So as far as project work goes, let me copy and paste some of this if I can. There we go. So notice as I'm highlighting all of this, all of that text is staying together. Let me go pop this over here in the Google Doc, and we'll do projects. Okay, so build a web app for movie search, blah, 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 and Illustrator. And then the next project was Cake Shop landing page. And then what you did. I think Launch X was the next one. Is that right? Launch X, random password generator, visit Venezuela. Okay, so when I'm doing projects like this, you built this as a web app, and so I like that you're putting the live link on there where I can go experience what you built. I think that that's really wise. As a hiring manager, I want to be able to just click on that and go, wow, look at what you made. Similar to what we did on the last resume where I clicked on that link and go, this is actually a really nice looking web page. And like, you got this really good like user impact statement. Like, this is what the site's all about. Like, getting to experience what you built is so much more powerful than just a link to a GitHub where it's like, okay, well, you can write some code. My kids can write code. I could teach them how to put it on GitHub. It doesn't mean the code works. In their case, it does, because they're getting really good at it. But my youngest is falling asleep reading a Ruby book right now. Well, not this moment, but like the last several nights, he's like sleeping here in the basement. He falls asleep reading a book on Ruby. But just having code on GitHub isn't necessarily indicative that you can write working code. But getting to click on a link and experience what you built is way more powerful. But here's what I would like to see. I would like to know, is this a solo or a group project? And then give me that live link. So say experience the app or something like that. And then make this your link. So whatever that link is going to be, I'm just going to throw a link of just nothing on there, just so it looks like a link. And then we already know it's a web app. So we can now change this and say users can search for favorite movies. And then you can say, like, tell me. So the first thing that I like to see is like that user impact statement. You can do that with an italic or something like that. And then the first bullet point I like to see is like, what did you learn? Like, what was like, tell me something fun or geeky or interesting about this project. So you could say like, first project consuming a RESTful API in JavaScript or something like that. I'm making this stuff up because I don't know. But then you can tell me like what the tech stack was. And you can literally just call that out as tech stack, where you give me just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and just give me the technologies that you used. That's how I like to see a project. For this next one, I'm going to imagine what if this was a group project. So we'll say that this first one was a solo project, and we're going to say this one was a group project. And I'm going to show you how I differentiate that. So we can say experience the app, and like go make that a link to something. I'm just going to throw an underline on it for now. But in here, we're going to say users can order tasty dessert from a fictitious e-commerce shop. So again, show me that user empathy statement. Like, why did you build it? The first bullet point that I would want to see here is what was your role on that team? So again, just imagining this is a group project. What was your role? So my responsibility was front end, UI, UX, and testing in Selenium or something like that. And then you can say like tech stack. You can say like responsive design, HTML, CSS, etc. So if you're doing a group project, tell me what your role was. What was your responsibility to that team? If it was a pair project where it was like you and one other person, then obviously you did a little of everything. But if it's a group project, tell me what your role was on that project. As a hiring manager, again, it shows me the impact that you had on that project. Now, when I go look at that project, if you do link GitHub, or if I go to the project and from there I can link to the GitHub, I have an expectation on what you contributed to that project. If you tell me that you did a little of everything, then that's fine too. But knowing, in this fictitious case, you worked on the UI UX. With that in mind, knowing that you worked on the front end, when I go look at the experience of that website, I'm like, whoa, look at the UI. Dang, that person can come here and do that UI. Like, I want to call them. I want to know how they did that thing. Like, I'm gonna like poke around. So if it's really impressive, and that was your impact, then that's what's going to stand out. And so again, tell me what your role was on that team. If you did a little of everything, then say, I did some of the front end and some of the back end, tied the pieces together. I did, front to back testing. I worked on the database. Like, tell me all that stuff in these bullet points. If you really want to expand it out, you can also tell me, like, what else did you learn? Like, learned about, say, Google OAuth or something like that. Like, add in here, like, again, tell me something fun, something geeky, something interesting that you learned. Like, again, this is part of the impact that you had on this project. And that impact was on you. But if I hire you, you're going to have that impact for me. So that's the kind of stuff that's going to stand out to a hiring manager. So a couple of ideas there on how I like to lay out my projects. So I'm just going to remove these last ones. Now, again, you don't have to make it exactly like this. I might throw bold or something like that on the actual project name. In this case, I'm going to take off the word landing page, and we'll just leave like that group project indicator on here. And just throw a bold or something on there, the same that you might on your work experience. Cool. The other thing that I might do is, because you did a lot of this coursework through this Platzi website, and it looks like it might be linked to a user account. So one thing that would be interesting is if I could click on that. So this actually verifies that you actually got a certificate or some sort of completion out of that. I think that that's great. What would also be interesting to see is if I could remove all of that and just see your profile. Do I see a list of everything? I do. I see all the courses that you took. That might be one way to compact all of that, where you can just list, like, Platzi.com, and then just give me like a quicker bullet point list of the different courses, but give me just the link to this page where it's just platzi.com/p/your name. And I can come in here and I can see all these things. And again, if I want to verify it, I can click on it and I can see that verification if I can click on those things. Maybe I can't. Okay. So it doesn't look like I can actually click on that to see the verification on that. Okay. So the other thing that you could do would be to make a landing page for yourself somewhere that has all these links, to where you give me one link and you like screenshot this and you make like a kind of a mini portfolio page where if I click on that, it takes me over to this page. I just think it's a little bit busy to have all of those links on your resume, because this does take up a lot of space. And trying to put all of that stuff in that left column is also going to take up a lot of space. So I would probably want to try to find a way to like shrink that down a little bit, maybe remove some of the space in between these things and like make it just a more compacted bullet point list or something like that, just so vertically it doesn't take up as much room. Might be something to think about there. Let's also look back on chat, see if other folks had thoughts and ideas. Keep in mind those links won't be useful when printed since the URLs aren't visible. Yeah, that's true. So what they're talking about is like the link to Twitter, for example. But if I know that that's Twitter, I'm just going to type in that username. So it's not that big of a deal. But I like seeing the domain on there if you can. Most people nowadays are going to get a digital copy of your resume, and it will be something clickable. So they're not generally going to take like a screenshot and send you an image of it. They'll actually pass along that PDF file. And so you do want things to be clickable as much as possible. I like that you've got the little like open icon on here that they know that this is going to like open into another folder. Seeing if I missed anything else here. Missed some hydrates, so appreciate those. Along with Chris, thanks for dropping by chat. You're contradicting your previous statement of no pronouns. The pronouns, yeah, on that previous resume, I did say like, you know, I did blah blah blah, and just say like you did the thing. Yeah, that is true. Um, the only time that I put that in there though was on this project where I said like this was my responsibility, because you're showing me that this was a group project and this was my impact to that group project. Um, so in that in my mind, I think that that's an okay exception. Where I was removing it was like in someone's job description where they were saying I did this thing, I did this thing, I did this thing. It's like, well, yeah, it was your job experience at that job on your resume, so you can remove those pronouns from there. But for a project like this, where it was a group project or a team kind of effort, it's okay to point out your responsibility, I think, on that. Depends how much space you have. Oh, someone asked, sorry, I missed a question. Would you recommend putting both the website and the GitHub link with the description, or just describing with the website link? You could do both. You could put the GitHub link on here as well. That would totally be fine. You know, just make a second link and just call it GitHub or GitHub code or something like that. But yeah, let them know that they can go experience that app by clicking on that thing. I think that would be fine. What else did I miss? ljtech.ca. Good to have you in chat as well. LJ stalking me too. All right, cool. That's why we picked the design, because I felt that since I don't have any work experience, the courses fill up that empty space. Okay, I get that. It does fill up that empty space, but again, you've got skills on this side. Like you've got your technical skill over on this side, and then you got your project work down here, and then your work experience underneath education. So what I was suggesting is like put all those technical skills all on top of each other, and then put all of your education like all on top of each other. And I wouldn't move the skills block over here. But again, similar to the last resume, I might put your spoken languages in as part of those skills. Again, with a skills block like this, you could have like, you know, spoken languages and then list out those languages. Again, though, only if that's important to the company. If they don't care that, you know, if you're going to a Spanish speaking company and they don't care that you also know English, then you can leave that off. It's not going to be as important to them. But if you're going to be in like a customer support role, having information like that on the resume could be very beneficial, because they know that you could talk to customers in multiple languages. So again, depending on the type of role that you're applying to, it could be beneficial, could be helpful. Cool. Overall though, like I don't mind the layout. Again, I like the different shades of blue on here. I think that it stands out. For me personally, my eyes would drift down that right column with the black text on white as opposed to the white text on blue. But I think you could play with that a little bit more. I would be curious like what this would look like if you actually moved those columns around. So if you want, try it out and send me another copy of it. I'd be curious to check that out. We did get one more resume come in. If you do want to kind of go through the resume review thing with us tonight, you're welcome to drop that in here as well. Just go send it into this link up above. All right, this next one, let's go look at the notes for, we're on to resume number 4. No specific background or asks, just sent in a resume for a review. Okay, you got it. No body. Okay, so this person's got like their full street address on here. Yeet that off the page. It does not need to be there. They're not going to be walking up to your door with a job offer, and it can subject you to geographic bias. So don't ever put your exact location on there. At best, maybe city, state, if the company is in that city and state and you want them to know that you live there. If you're working remote, you could maybe put time zone or something on there, or just leave location off completely and just give them a phone number. Otherwise, it's none of their business at this stage where you live. From a margins point of view, this one's really long too. It might be a European CV, so we'll dive in on some of that. But the margins are really wide down the right and left section, and you get this big gap down here at the bottom, big gap over here on the side. So we'll look at some ways of maybe bringing this down to a 2-page resume. But again, my recommendation is make one big resume. Put lots and lots of data on there, lots of information, lots of bullet points, lots of projects, like every project you've ever done, every job you've ever done. Make a really big resume. And then when you go apply for a job, trim away everything that doesn't matter to that company. you'll find, like, with a little bit of practice, you're going to find, you know what, it only takes me like 5 minutes to customize a resume, as opposed to customizing this resume over and over. It's like, well, this company wants this skill, so let me rearrange that, but then I have to undo that change to apply it this other company. It's a lot more work. So just make one really big resume, and when you're ready to apply for a job, trim it back down to one page by taking out the stuff that that particular company doesn't care about. If you've got a lot of experience, or if you're bringing experience from another background that's still relevant to that company, having a 2-page resume is fine. I think that that would be okay. Zooey taking off, got to put your kid to sleep. Cool. Thanks for dropping by, Zooey. I'm just going to pull this chat window over here so I can see it a little bit better. Cool. Let's zoom in and take a look at nobody's resume. Having, specifying it's a cell phone, I think is redundant. Just, I would take that out and just have the phone number itself. Link to their LinkedIn is fine. Again, if you need room on the page, I don't bother with the summary. I don't think that that's important. Core competencies, I like this where they're like calling out, major sorts of blocks of skills. Like I've worked on healthcare systems. I've worked on manufacturing systems. I think this kind of stuff is totally fine. In this case, the way that they've sort of built this out is using something called full justification, where it's going edge to edge and it's filling in all the words in between with varying amounts of space. So we can see, like up here, for example, this paragraph, it all comes exactly to that right edge. All these things come exactly to this right edge. But what ends up happening is you have all these really inconsistent amounts of white space in between all the words. To me, it looks a little funny. I would get rid of that and just have like regular justification on here, like left justification. Spreading it out edge to edge makes it look more full than if you just had regular justification on here. And it'll give like a minor appearance that it's not like wall-to-wall text. Kisu spending some channel points on blinking the nano leaves. Appreciate that. I can do that too. Watch, I can do it with a button. Oh no, maybe I can't. I broke it. Never mind. All right, Kisu's in charge of the blinky lights. I did wire it up to the follow, so if you follow the channel, it will blink the lights for you. But it won't play the little sound. So I do have like a little audio thing that we can play if you do join. But so yeah, so I like the core competencies on here. They're calling out like the languages that they know. They're calling out the databases they've used, different kinds of tooling. Again, some of these tools won't be relevant to some companies. They'll be more relevant to others, depending on the kinds of roles that you're applying to. And so some of these you may take out if it's not relevant to a particular company. In this case, they've been at their current job for a decade. Kudos to them for that. Most people don't stick around at a job that long. I like that they're kind of calling out, sort of a statement on like the overall impact that they've had at the company. Specty, appreciate the follow. Testing of the blinky lights, good job. And then they're immediately going into like, these are things that I've done and the impact that I've had. So use Toad to develop, modify, extensively utilize SQL to modify the system as needed and to understand the relationship. This is a little wordy. You could probably trim that down a little bit. Utilize Visual Studio's TFS for source control, task creation, monitoring. Okay. Understand the relationship of the database layer of applications as called by the Java UI layer. Follow Scrum Agile development. So I like that you're calling out what your regular responsibilities are. What I'm not getting out of this, though, is you've been there for a decade. What impact have you had? How has following Scrum Agile development helped your team, made your team better? How has understanding this relationship made your job better, made it easier, made it faster? What impact has this had? So it's good to know that you've done these things, but so what? Not in a bad way. I'm not saying it in a bad way. Oh, now they blink. It just came up from when I hit the little button. So not in a bad way, but why does this text matter to me and my company? I know that if I hire you, you're going to come do that here too, but if you utilized SQL to modify those systems and it made them 10% faster, that's impressive to me. Knowing that you did the thing, that's fine. That's impressive too. I'm not saying that it's not impressive. It's more impressive to know what impact that had because, again, you're teasing me that you're going to bring that to my company and have that impact at my company too. Again, from a spacing point of view, you've got the same amount of space in between your summary and this first header as you do with this header, but then you got a lot of extra space in between these two jobs. That might have been just to kind of fill it up a little bit, but then this job spills over into page 2. So I think you could do a little bit better around like compacting some of this content a little bit, because this is pretty wordy. Your experience does go back a long, long way, and you've got really good education. You're showing the university of where you went to school and all the degrees that you have. That's fine. Leadership and community, this is all really great. Toastmasters lets me know if I ever need somebody to do public speaking, you're the person I'm going to call. Board of directors as a treasurer as well for a trust fund committee, that's fantastic too. Definitely keep that kind of stuff on there. Any kind of dates that you have on here, I would write justify up against that right margin. Also, you've capitalized the word August in like a smaller, like all caps kind of font, but the word February is just regular. And you generally want to put these things in like reverse chronological order, the same way that you've done your work experience. You probably want these things in reverse chronological order as well. So put your current like trust fund committee at the top and put the other thing underneath it. Overall, like from a layout point of view, the layout's not bad, but it is wordy, and it made it 3 pages long. Now, in a career that's gone on for 28 years, that's okay. You've earned it. But when you're applying for a new job, some of this stuff is not going to be as applicable, or maybe all of this content's not going to be as applicable. Like you could probably leave the this job on the resume, but I would probably like shorten this to a single sentence, maybe 1 bullet point. If you're not going to be doing that kind of work at that next job, if you're not working on this kind of work at that next job, you could reduce the amount of information that you tell me about it. Same thing, these bullet points are enormous compared to the bullet points that you started with up here. These bullet points are nice and short, but then the bullet points got longer and longer and longer to the point where you're giving me like multiple sentences. So again, shorten this kind of stuff up. You do get into like some of the impact that it had and so on, and I think that that's okay. But again, when I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking quickly, do you have the skills, and are you going to bring the superpowers to my job that I'm looking for? That's really what I'm looking for on a resume. So try to make it a little more compact if you were to actually go apply for a job. But in this person's case, they're not actually looking for work. So I think it's fine. Present is also not capitalized on the trust fund entry. Yeah, exactly. So capital P on that one. So again, just consistency on that kind of stuff. Immediately elected into the role as treasurer at the same time. That's the kind of impact. Like you were trusted enough within this group to immediately get promoted into that kind of role. That's fantastic. Like it's a good experience, and it shows the impact. Like, you can be trusted and you can handle a lot of this responsibility aside from the job. I think that that's fine. Seeing if I missed anything else in chat. I don't think so on this one. All right, let's go on to number 5, anonymous person. All right, so if we zoom out, pretty good overall use of the page. The gutter at the bottom, like the margin at the bottom, is a little wide. Same at the top. I might bring those margins out a little bit more just to expand things vertically a little bit, because it does look pretty compact in the middle of the page. But we'll get into a little bit of that. The first thing I would do on here is get rid of these vertical bars in between your skills and just put commas in here. Applicant tracking systems will probably parse this okay. Human beings are going to read it and go, there's a lot of space in between these things. I do like that you're kind of grouping things up as languages and frameworks, but Postgres isn't a framework, it's a database. Active Record's a library, it's not a language or a framework. JSON, it's not really a language or a framework either. HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, those are fine. Postman, Heroku, AWS, Redis, GraphQL, REST, it's not really a tool. Circle CI has a capital I, Datadog, GitHub Actions, Git, those are fine. Testing, I'm a big fan of testing, so I'd love to see testing tools on here. So I might reorganize a little bit of some of this. Also, this is really crammed in together. The summary statement immediately into a header, like there's no vertical space. So that's why I was saying, like if you make this top margin a little bit smaller and make that bottom margin a little bit smaller, it'll give you some room to like space these things out a little bit so it doesn't look like it's all mashed together vertically speaking. You can spread out each of these sections a little bit more and put a little bit of space between this last bullet point on your experience and the header of education. You do a pretty good job with the right justification on the dates and these titles over here. I think that those are fine. But again, I'm also seeing a lot of font size changes on here as well. So again, I would just come in, I would highlight all the text, I would just make everything 10-point font. And then I would go back and I would change these headings to 12-point font or 14 if you really want, and then make your name at the top like 18 or 20 point. So 3 font sizes on the whole page, and it'll make it look a lot more standardized. In this case, they went with a serif font, which I think is fine. If you want to use a serif font, that's okay. You don't have to use a sans serif font. From a readability point of view, people are going to read a serif font just fine. Your software applications, your project work, again, it got really crammed together because you don't have a lot of vertical space because of those top and bottom margins. I think that you could add just that little bit of extra space on here. You're giving me lots of good bullet points about these projects. So let's talk about Greek God Bod. It was a paired project. You got GitHub and a Heroku link. So you're giving me a live experience as well as the code. Created a workout application in a service-oriented architecture. So, okay, it's a workout application. That's the only thing I know about this. Like, what does the user do? Why did you build it? Who did you build it for? Is it for first-time fitness people? Is it for people that, they want the Greek God Bod? Is it for only hardcore kind of people? In this case, I know this student because I've worked with them. If we were to actually open up that Heroku link, we would actually see that the first thing you hit is a login page and nothing else. It's like, what do I even do here? I have to log in before I can see anything, see a screenshot, see a description of like, why do I even want to use this site? So that was why I called that out earlier. I didn't realize that this resume was coming in, but yeah, make sure that when people go to a landing page, you're telling them like what the project is about, show them some screenshots, like show them some information about like why they want to use it, who it's for, who it's going to help, why did you build it, link to the GitHub code, that kind of stuff if you're open sourcing it, stuff like that. But yeah, this is all really crammed together. Use test-driven development to test API. So you've already told me that you've used test-driven development, so testing the API is a little redundant. So you can just say like TDD API consumption using via utilizing facades. So via and utilizing are basically the same word. Services and Ruby objects, utilized action cable and Redis to integrate WebSockets, create an online chat room for users. That's cool. So again, that could be part of the user impact statement. Like users can log in and have live chat about their exercise routines or something like that. Like, tell me why you built this for users. Like, what can the user do with this? 501c free, it's catchy. Built 2 applications, front end and back end, that communicated via JSON. So in this case, the student is a back end student, but makes it sound like they built the front end and the back end. Because I've worked with the student, I know that that wasn't the case. They only worked on the back end. But this bullet point makes it sound like they did both the front end and the back end. That's why I was explaining when you have a group project, tell me what your responsibility was on that project. Did you build all of the front end and all the back end? Did you do a bit of both? Did you only work on the back end? Like, tell me that. If it's a full stack app, what did you actually work on? Did you do the database design? Did you work on the deployments? Did you do like back end testing, front end testing, all the testing? Like, tell me what you did. But when you give me a bullet point that looks like built 2 applications, front end and back end, at first glance, it makes me think, oh, you're a full stack developer. You built this whole thing. Like it was a group project, but you built the whole thing. Like you worked on all aspects of this. So I think just being really clear about what you actually did in that project is important, and not what we did as a team, because I'm not hiring your team. I'm not hiring your software project team from school. I'm hiring you. What can you do? That's what I'm looking for on the resume. Sweater Weather was one of my favorite projects to teach at Turing. It basically allows users to go in and create a road trip from point A to point B and figure out what the weather is going to be like when you get there. And it's pulling in like images from an image API and so on. It was really fun to build. So they talk about a lot of stuff here, like utilize caching and so on. But again, from an impact point of view, how did that help? How did caching help? Did it make things 5% faster or 500 times faster? What was the impact of that? Knowing you did it is great. Telling me why that mattered to the project is even better. Specified status codes utilize exception and error handling to ensure proper communication to those consuming exposed APIs. So in this case, they were also building the backend API. So this project was an API project. So they're building an API that people could hit and get this information. So I think it was a little bit wordy, and they're wrapping just a couple of words onto a new line. So like try to find a way to like keep all that stuff on a single line if possible. Work experience. I think that this is fine. Operationally ran. I would just say like operated facility containing a census of 30 to 50 clientele. Created, updated, maintained health systems to improve company functionality. If you know how much it improved, again, like get some quantified information on there if you can. It's not always possible, but if you can, it'd be great. Then education, they're talking about Turing and the other work that they did, or the other education they did. So overall, this is a pretty good resume. They're following a lot of standards that I like to teach around, you know, how to group up your skills. Although me personally, I'm not a fan of that vertical bar, just put commas in there. But I think, you know, grouping these things up a little bit more, like Postgres is really a tool. As far as like these subheadings go, I would move Postgres down here as a tool. JSON's not really a language or a framework. And if you're doing API design, which I would probably call out here is like some of what you do, like you do Agile, you do RESTful API design, RESTful API consumption. You could then put, you know, I mean, in RESTful APIs, JSON's going to be an expectation. If you do RESTful APIs, 90% chance you're using JSON. And again, if you need more room on the page, ditch the summary. That'd be the first thing to go. MVC is not a model. MVC is a design pattern. So again, just using proper terminology on here as well. If you want to call that thing out, that kind of thing. All right, let's look at the last one here, number 6. So I should have looked at notes for number 5. So I recently completed Turing, cited on a Postman class that I added. Incidentally, this student, if I remember right, this student also reached out and said, hey, because I put Postman on the resume, it actually, like, they actually brought that up in the interview of like, oh, you use Postman. A lot of companies are using Postman. So any kind of tool that you use, get that on a resume. If you think it's going to, like, if it's a widespread tool, don't put things like VS Code. Nobody cares what editor you use. But if it's like a well-known application that companies are using, like a Circle CI, Travis CI, Jarvis, or, you know, using a tool like Postman or Stoplight or something like that, like if it's important to that company that you're learning as part of your company research, when you're talking to people, you say like, hey, I'm just out of curiosity, like what kinds of tools do you use internally as a team? And if they're like, oh yeah, we use Postman. It's like, cool, I use Postman too. I'm going to make sure that that's on the resume, because if they use Postman, I want to look like one of them so that they're more likely to hire me. And by look like them, I mean like you've got the same sorts of skills that their current employees have. So going back and looking at, I would love some feedback. My initial instinct is my resume is a bit crowded. Yep. Has too much information on it. Yep. Love some general feedback, which we already went through. There are major faults. Not really. If there's anything I can improve. So hopefully that'll help out. If anybody else has comments on that one, feel free to drop anything else in chat to help them out. Otherwise, we'll move on to number 6. And then we had one more come in on email, so I'll pull that one up in a sec. This is a resume from someone from whom I received a resume in the past. They've incorporated some of the feedback. That looks like something I wrote. Well, I mean, I wrote the note, but is this a resume that I have reviewed in the past and they've incorporated some of the feedback? I forget. Hopefully somebody didn't submit a resume from someone else still. But we'll go take a look. Just going to hydrate here for a moment. Excuse me. Doug's VRM. Appreciate the follow. Thank you for that. All right. So single page resume. If we zoom out a little bit, overall, pretty good use of space on the page. Nothing really stands out there. Overall, a couple things kind of stand out to me. So we'll dive in on some of that. Let me zoom out one more here. So they kept their name on here, which is fine. Again, with the contrast on here, I think it's okay. You know, it stands out quite a bit, and they're using this dark green color elsewhere on the page. So overall, I think that the use of color is fine. Career profile. Again, if this kind of stuff is important to the company, like if you're calling things out here that are important to the company, I think it's okay to keep. If you need room on the page, it's the first thing to go. you could write some of this stuff in a cover letter to show like this is why my resume matters to you. Something to think about there. Experienced software developer, proficient in many platforms and tools, focused on delivering business value through quality software. So you're catering to like the business MBA management team by writing buzzwords like that. I can take hard problems from conception to production. A passionate, agile collaborator. I understand that the team succeeds together. I'm passionate about creating distributed systems, prototyping with new tech, and automating the tedious. I have an intellectual curiosity that fuels a fanatical devotion to skills improvement and constant learning. I also have a talent for leading technical projects, driving initiatives, and keeping all the balls in the air. Using some metaphor in here that may get lost on some people. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this in here for a sec because I want to highlight something. So that summary was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentences. 4 of them started with I. You probably want to change that up a little bit. Yes, this is about you, but saying I can, I am, I have, it gets repetitive after a while. This is also why some of this stuff might belong in a cover letter. But this is also a little buzzwordy, to be honest. It tells me a little bit about you and who you are as an individual, but it's also kind of buzzword heavy. You do talk about like some of the technical skill that you bring. Let me go back over the resume here. You do talk about some of the technical skill, like distributed systems, prototyping new tech, automating the tedious. You do need to be a little bit careful about making it sound like the work that you do is tedious. But I have an intellectual curiosity that fuels a fanatical devotion to skills improvement. Like, this is playing on a lot of like really high level language that is not going to be terribly meaningful to an engineering manager. It will be impressive to business leaders. So if you've got like 15 plus years experience, yeah, this will probably stand out to some people. But the average hiring manager, the average like other peer engineer that's going to be interviewing you, they're going to read this and go, huh? Like, so just be careful about how you word some of this stuff. Languages and frameworks, Go, Golang. So hitting on multiple keywords here, not just the word Go, not just Golang. They're hitting on both there. That's fine. PHP, SQL, TypeScript, JavaScript. All the capitalization here looks really great. I'd probably take the period off the end of the lines here. These aren't sentences, so you don't really need to end with a period. MySQL, Postgres, Mongo, Redis, Docker, Kubernetes, Linux, Google Cloud, AWS, Prometheus, Grafana. It's fine. Although you're kind of like, you're kind of on the systems level here around like the operating systems and the cloud infrastructure and so on. Prometheus is a monitoring, well, Prometheus and Grafana are both for like monitoring. It is kind of systems, but I might do like systems/monitoring. Otherwise, I might move Prometheus and Grafana up into the databases and tools since you're calling out other tools. Redis is technically a database. So technically on this line, you haven't told me any tools. I might move Prometheus and Grafana up into that line. Practices, serverless. Is that really a practice? I mean, that's one way that you know how to write code. But you've got an open parentheses, another open parentheses, and one closing parentheses. So are you missing a closing parentheses after AWS Lambda maybe? Is it really a practice or that's just something that you'd know? I don't know that I'd call it a practice. I would just call it like development skills or like other high level development skills or something like that. Just looking back on Me Too's feedback, career profile section is hugging that header very snugly. Company names are a bit too light, give them more contrast. I'd probably capitalize frameworks and tools under skills, also remove the space before frameworks. Yeah, there does look to be like extra white space in here. And yeah, I would capitalize the, like whatever that next thing is, like capital D on databases / capital T on tools, capital F on frameworks. Yeah, good catch on those Me Too. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know if you pronounce it Me Too or Metu, but I always like to try to pronounce people's names the way they prefer them. So if you want to let me know in chat how to pronounce it, I will refer to that going forward, or at least try to remember to, try my best to remember. I like that they're calling out just the number of the month on here. Me too. Okay, cool. I think that's fine. Yeah, I kind of agree. The company name in that light gray doesn't really stand out very much. In fact, I would probably put the company and your role on the same line, because you're putting the location, like the fact that these are all remote. This one was in Bangladesh, like way over on the side with the date. I would rather just see like full stack developer, comma, company name, comma, remote, because in this case, remote actually wrapped around to another line. So I would probably do that a little different. I think keeping that right justification would be fine. Well, let's go see what that's actually going to look like in practice. So when you're setting up a right justification like this, what I would do is highlight everything on the page, and then in the ruler bar up at the top, you can click in here and you can say, I want to add a right type tab stop, and then just pull that all the way over to the margin. And then whenever you hit tab, it's just going to move the rest of that over to that justification. So what we would do here, need to go find that word remote. It got lost somehow. There it is. So what I would do here is I would say I was a full stack developer at Stuff in a Box LLC. What I might do here is say like remote with the company name, and then you've got your date from there. So now it's all on one line. So you don't have multiple lines anymore. And then if you want to highlight your title, you can highlight the title if your title is more important. Some people want to put bold on the company instead. I would say whichever one you're going to put bold, put first. So if you're going to bold the company name, put the company name, and then put your role after that, and specify if it was remote or whatever. Now, if you've done some work remote and some work on site, then I think, you know, putting the location in parentheses like this, I think is going to be fine. But now we've compacted that down into a single line. We don't have multiple lines going through that anymore. Let's look through some of the bullet points here quickly, and then I'm going to go into this other one that we had emailed in. Built and led talented team to deliver projects. I don't really need to know that they were talented. I presume that they were talented if you were delivering projects. So again, be careful about adding words that don't add value to the page. Create robust. Okay, so it's a present role. So they're writing some of this in present tense. Like I build and lead talented teams. I create blah, blah, blah. But then they go into past tense. I developed, you know, this other thing. So I would probably keep the tense of the language all the same. Even if you're still presently there, you can say built and led a talented team. Now, in this case, did you build the team or were you building the projects? Because that's also a little ambiguous to me. I kind of read this like you were hiring the team and like building the team. And then say like created robust and detailed project plans and strategies. I think the slash could be just a comma or an ampersand or something like that. But again, similar to other resumes, like you're telling me what you did, but you're not telling me what the impact of that was. So you developed and maintain monitoring infrastructure using Prometheus, Alert Manager, distributed tracing. So you mentioned Prometheus in your skills block above, but not these. So when I read through this, my expectation is that you know Prometheus really well. These other tools maybe you don't know as well because you didn't list it in the skills block. But you list it here, which means if I'm looking for someone who has used a tool called Alert Manager, you're going to trip on those keywords. But I don't see it in your skills block. So do you know it well enough to speak to in an interview? These are the kind of lingering questions that I'm going to have in my mind as I'm looking through your resume. Kisu, thanks for coming by. I'll finish watching the stream on YouTube tomorrow. Thanks for the review. No problem. Happy to help out anytime. Full stack developer, developed innovative iOS, Android, and web apps. Advised senior leadership regarding cutting edge technology. So again, like get rid of the filler words like cutting edge technologies, like just say new technologies. And change management to align solutions with best in class standards. Again, this is feeling really buzzwordy heavy, which is going to be great if whoever's reading this has like an MBA, they're going to care about those buzzwords. Most engineering managers are not going to find value in reading a statement like this. So just use like everyday language of tell me what you did and what the impact of that was. What's interesting is they're showing at that job what their tech stack was. And so I can now see, okay, they claim to know all these skills at the top, and this is where they've actually used those skills. So I actually kind of like that they've called out their tech stack at that job. I think it's fine. So they're a lead, they were a full stack developer, they were a lead, they were freelance, they were a full stack developer. So they kind of went back and forth between like developer, lead, developer, lead, developer. So like, do you want to be a lead? Do you want to be like a developer? Like, I might maybe standardize on some of those titles a little bit. I don't think that's as important. Incorporate features including DRM, video encryption, playback everywhere, multi-bit rate streaming. So you're listing a lot of things here as far as like what this company was doing. Developed a highly scalable video on demand platform from scratch. I would want to see some quantified information in here, like how was it scalable? Like how many users did you build? Like, did you have to make it scalable, or you chose to make it scalable? Like you made it scalable, but we've got 1,000 users, or we started with 1,000 users and we had to scale because when I left that role, we had 1 million users or a couple of million users. Like how many users did you actually have? Building an application to be scalable isn't always necessary, especially when you're building something from scratch like this. You don't have to build it like Google or Amazon would build it from day one. You can build it small and grow it over time with best practices. But you do go in and you mention a lot of like, these were all the different kinds of things that I was involved in. I think that that's fine. Platform was adopted amongst several other leading media companies. That's great. So that shows the impact that you had. Like the platform that we built was picked up and used. So I think that's fine. Overall, I think the layout on this is okay. I would clean up like, moving this from 3 lines down to 1 line, move this down into a single line. But as a freelance employee, like what did you do for those 8 months? Like you give me lots of bullet points about all these other roles, but you don't tell me anything about what you did as a freelance developer. So is this just like a placeholder because you had an 8-month gap? Or did you actually build something in that 8 months? To me, as a hiring manager, that stands out as a kind of moment. And you want to reduce those as much as possible on a resume. Be consistent with name capitalizations. MongoDB should be Mongo with capital DB. Yep, up here, for example. So that DB should be MongoDB capitalized. Good catch on that, me too. Cool. All right, so all of those. Let's pull up this last one. So in the form submission, I won't read your name. I would like feedback on the length, considering I have 10 plus years experience prior to tech in higher education and sustainability nonprofits. Cool. Let's pull this one up and we'll see what we got. Cool. Just want to make sure that it's not going to docs anything else by pulling this up on here. Let me pull this into here and we'll look at this one next. All right, so we have software engineer. I'm presuming that your name is going to be on here somewhere. Presuming that your name is going to be on top. Summary, work experience. You got skills kind of vertically here, education, and then non-technical experience, which is wrapping onto page 2. So in this case, this person's a career changer, which is fantastic. I love helping folks like this into new roles in tech. I think that's fine. Also got some volunteer experience. So overall, the first thing I notice is like huge amount of leftover space on page 2. Is there a way that we can compact this down to 1 page? But again, kind of following my philosophy of make one really big resume and trim it down to 1 page as you apply for a job. And so we'll dive in on some of that. And I think we could maybe take a look at some of the project work here and see, like, can we break these things down into bullet points, and maybe that'll expand it out into a full 2-page kind of resume. Creative, detailed, oriented professional with a deep interest in climate tech and learning in public. Proven track record of creating, implementing successful front-end and back-end web apps, transitioning from environmental nonprofit work to technology in order to solve problems in a more hands-on, creative way. Overall, I think this is a pretty good initial statement of who you are and why I'm reading your resume. This lets me know kind of the direction that you want to take your career, and if my company is involved in climate technology or, things along those lines, this sort of speaks to me in that way, to let me know that this is someone that I would want to contact. If I don't do anything about climate tech, then that statement doesn't have as much impact. It lets me know what your interests are, but it may show a misalignment in why you're applying for a job at my company if you care about climate tech, if my company doesn't do climate tech. But I always recommend chase the jobs that you want. So I think that that's fine. As far as contact info, I'm presuming that there might have been an email address and a phone number in here at one point. GitHub, LinkedIn, Twitter, those are all fine. So yeah, I would want to figure out like where did your name fit on the page. Generally, I would recommend like put your name and then whatever title you want to call yourself, similar to what I did up here at the very top. Like give yourself a name, give yourself a title. You don't necessarily have to level yourself. You can just call yourself software developer, software engineer. In the United States, engineer is not a protected title, but it is in other countries. So in other countries, you can't call yourself an engineer unless you've actually gone to engineering school. But yeah, give yourself a title and then get your contact info in there. Okay, so work experience. Software engineering at 100 devs. In this case, 100 devs, is it a school? Is it a consultancy? Like when people list this kind of stuff as work experience, the first thing that goes through my mind is if you're a student or whether you're actually getting paid for the work that you're doing. In this case, 100 devs is actually coaching people to learn the content and then go work on freelance projects and actually get paid. So as I understand, right, and maybe anybody in chat that's gone through 100 devs, if you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but people in 100 devs actually get paid for their projects. Do you get paid from 100 devs or do you get paid directly from the client? And like the clients are going through the 100 devs organization to like hand out these projects. I'm not sure exactly how that works. I would find out if they hadn't kicked me out of their Discord server. I'm still waiting for the appeal process to go through to get back in. But my understanding is that you're actually getting paid. So in this case, it's actually work experience because you're getting paid for it. So putting the date on here as opposed to like putting it over next to this, again, you're playing with a slightly different format here. 100 Devs is an agency with a training program. Gotcha. Okay. They do some learning and then they find their own clients, not paid by 100 Devs. Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying on that. So going with a slightly different layout here where you're doing that 2-column layout. Again, one piece of advice that I've heard, and I've only heard it from one person, is that applicant tracking systems, when they look at 2 columns, they expect that the left column is less important than the content in the right column and may judge keywords differently based on the column that it finds. Because visually, it can't necessarily tell that the left column in this case is wider than the right column. I would probably do some A/B testing and check sites like JobScan. Is it jobscan.co? Yeah. You can get some free scans on here. And if you sign up and let them spam you from time to time, they'll give you like 5 more free scans. And what you do is you actually put in the job post and you put in the resume and it tells you how well they match. But it'll also sort of track like how applicant tracking system friendly, how ATS friendly is your resume. So something that you could maybe take a look at. And just do a little bit of A/B testing. Like try moving your left column try moving the right column to the left and see if that has any impact on JobScan or getting phone calls. Try it different ways, see what works. If it works this way, keep it this way. Collaborate with a team of students to build modern and responsive web apps using best practices built semantically. So one thing here is it's an agency with a training program. So one thing I might do here, instead of calling them students, is call them like trainees or something like that. Because you want to say it's like, if it's a training program, technically you're a student, you're learning the stuff. But by calling yourself a student here, again, as a hiring manager, I look at this, go, well, if it's a school, is it really work experience? Or is it like project-based experience? Because that can be a little bit different. If all of your recent projects were part of 100 devs, I probably would change that heading a little bit, because again, you're listing this as work experience or under the same heading as work experience. Now, again, if these were paid projects, if you built these projects and got paid for them, then yes, they're professional experience, but then you would probably want to list like who the client was, or put like freelance developer and then put the projects that you did as the freelance developer that you actually got paid for. That would be one way to kind of mitigate that a little bit, just so it lessens the confusion of people reading over your resume. Otherwise, they look at that and go, wait, is it work experience or is it project work? And was the project work part of 100 devs or was it like just other freelance work? Because you're listing recent projects and the project names in the same font and font size as this heading. Although this is kind of a charcoal gray, it might not come through on the stream very well. It's kind of a really dark gray where this job is like dark black. But at a quick glance, that contrast is a little bit hard to tell. So I would probably like indent some of this stuff a little bit. If it's going to be part of the 100 devs, I would like indent it or find a slightly different way of showing that this is part of 100 devs. Full stack developer. So again, this is your freelance work. Created full stack web apps and websites for clients across small and medium-sized businesses. Consult on SEO, integrations, and social media strategy. Cool. Some clients included. Perfect. This is great. Yeah, this is exactly what people are going to want to see. As a freelance developer, this is the stuff that you've done. Now, I would probably move this above the 100 devs. So you're still part of 100 devs. Like you're still going through the 100 devs program. As I read this, that's what it looks like to me. But the fact that you've actually done professional experience and you've gotten paid by these clients, I would move that above 100 devs. This is my take. So if I were to lay this stuff out, I would do it like this. Let's pull this stuff in. I can highlight the stuff. Come on. Highlight. There we go. And let's pull this into an experience block over here in the resume. I'll just do experience. So again, I'm going to bold that. I'm going to make that 12-point font, and then we'll just start listing stuff underneath it. So I've got that right justification already. So we can come in here. We can start building this stuff out. And I'm just going to correct some of these bullet points here. And then recent projects. And then we had, it's in here somewhere. There it is. So this was the other job. So I'm going to move this up above. Full stack web developer. And you don't need to say at. You can just list the name of the company. You can list the location. And then we'll throw these dates over on the right edge. And we'll just say like 3-letter date. Small dash to present. And then we can start doing some of this. Consulted on SEO. And instead of saying some clients included, you could say clients. Or you could say clients included if you want the word included in there, you can. If you want to make it sound like, you know, here's a sampling of the companies that I've worked with, then you could have that in there if you like. And then I would list 100 devs after that. So in here, so software. So in this case, software engineering isn't a title. So I'd say like software engineer, like trainee or something like that with 100 devs, Los Angeles, California. Also from January to present. Let's see, collaborated with a team of students, collaborated on teams, using best practices, using industry best practices, building modern/responsive web apps. You can spell that out as applications if you want. Build semantically structured full stack web applications. I would probably call out like in like JavaScript, Node.js, or give me like a tech stack bullet point at the end or something of like the main technologies that you learn at. Well, actually, I guess you're kind of calling that out here, so we don't need to call that out here. Okay, so recent projects. So this is your project work at the job or at 100 devs. So we can do a couple of things here. We can indent this to another level, but now it's definitely going to push down onto that second page, depending on the rest of the layout on there. But what I wanted to highlight here is like you want your freelance work to come above 100 devs. You want them to see that first and go, oh, you're a freelance developer. You've been doing this for 8 months. Cool. And then they're going to start to kind of gloss over the rest because they see that you're a freelance developer. Now, one of the things that you're going to have to be able to talk about in interviews is why you're applying for a full-time job when you've had a successful freelance career started that's only 8 months long. So a couple things to talk about there is you could say like, I started in freelance projects, but I realized I want the stability of working for a single company. That's why I'm applying to your company. I can bring these skills, I can utilize my background and other things that I bring to the company. And I want to do that at one business as opposed to, freelancing and trying to drum up clientele and so on. You don't want to make it sound like it was awful being a freelance developer, but I think highlighting that you're ready to, you've got enough experience. Now you want to bring that to one company. This is that company, and this is why, you provide value to them. So again, with the project work, you could do something similar to how I laid out these projects here. You don't have to, but it would be one way to sort of break out like this was a group project, this was a solo project, this was my role on group projects and so on. Just one way to kind of go through some of that. Now, the ask on this resume was, how do I talk about my previous experience? So if I come back to what they were asking, I have 10 plus years experience prior to tech in higher education and sustainability nonprofits. And they want to know, like, how do I speak to some of that? So director of corporate engagement at Earthshare. That's cool. Created and implemented corporate strategy or engagement strategy for environmental nonprofit, including maintaining a year-round calendar of engagement programs and outreach efforts. So this is a fantastic bullet point because this tells me what you did and the impact that it had and kind of the recurring nature of like, I did this every year. Increased participation in quarterly partner networking by over 200%. Quantified information always looks fantastic on here. Again, you're kind of teasing the impact of like, I could do that at your company too. Now, this isn't technical experience. And so we do need to find a way, like, how do we spin this when you're actually talking about becoming a developer? Well, not becoming, you are a developer now. Why does this help you be a better developer? What are some takeaways from this job that are making you like a good software developer? That's where you're kind of bridging your previous career with where you want to take your new career by like, you don't want to make it sound like, okay, I did all that and now all that's over and now I'm a completely different person, completely new skills, and none of that matters. If it doesn't matter anymore, why is it on the resume? So the fact that it's on the resume, you want to show that you've been professionally employed. That's important. But being able to talk about why this has made you a better programmer, better engineer, better problem solver, that's what you're going to want to talk about in the interviews. That's how you're going to be writing up that cover letter to really stand out to them about why this experience matters. Now, if they're an environmental company, this already matters. So there may be very little that you actually have to explain. If you're applying to a company where they're not doing environmental work, let me quantify that a little bit. You probably won't want to apply for companies that are not doing environmental work because this is your passion, this is your background. And getting into the tech industry in that's adjacent to a previous industry that you've got experience is a much easier way of getting into tech. So the fact that you've worked in environmental, impact types of jobs, and that's still something that's interesting and a passion of yours, but now you've got these technical skills, that's going to get you into that technical role with those kinds of companies much faster than if you had all this background and experience, but you're going to go work at an insurance company. It's not to say working at an insurance company is bad, but having earth share experience and stuff like that, it's not going to mean as much to that insurance company. Some of it will, but some of it won't. And so being able to communicate what that impact is and like why that matters to them is what's going to stand out in those interviews. But how do we convey that on the resume? I don't necessarily think that you have to tie in this experience in a way that shows me, this is why this made you a better developer. You're showing me that you were professionally employed in important roles. You're a director, sustainability manager. Like, these are all good things. Business manager. These are all fine. It's okay to talk about this stuff. What I would say is you may want to decrease the amount of text that you put on here, since this is not the career that you're going to have going forward. So it's not that it's not important, but it's not as important as the content that you have up here. This content is way more important. In the interview, you can talk more about the impact and why that made you a better developer and better problem solver, and you can communicate better with business owners and stakeholders and, grant writers and all that kind of stuff based on all of this other experience and the fact that you worked in B Corp and stuff like that. I worked at a B Corp as well. It was pretty fun. You can talk about that kind of stuff in the interview or on the phone screen and so on to get into the interview process. So you don't necessarily have to say like on here why this made you a better developer, but those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to communicate. So I would reduce some of the text in here a tiny little bit. It could mean just shrinking the font to 10-point font so that this is all on one line. Maybe this will come up to 2 lines. But again, I think you can also like shorten some of the words a little bit as well. Kimberly Rodriguez, thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. We're doing some resume reviews tonight. We've been going for almost 3 hours. This is our last one, but welcome by. So yeah, I would probably just reduce the amount of content that you're sharing about these jobs. Again, it's not that it's not important, but it's not as important as the technical stuff that you've got up above. Education, I think these are fine. Like, I would just put the graduating year. I don't think they need to know when you started. Just put the graduating year and like what your degree was. I think that that's all you need. And down here, let's talk about your volunteer experience. I love seeing volunteer experience on here. I think that it's a great thing to have. Build and maintain websites, digital presence for LGBT organizations in countries where homosexuality is illegal. Use WordPress platform and work on teams of 10 with developers, plural, from across the world. That's a great experience. It's great technical volunteer experience. And it's a good organization too. So kudos to you for being involved in that. Yeah, I think it's fine. Having volunteer work on here is really good, especially when it's technical in nature. If it wasn't technical in nature, I would say, like I volunteered at a soccer camp or something like that. It's like, that would be important if I was a sports company and I know that you've got an interest in soccer. If you volunteered at a sports camp and I'm hiring you for insurance, is that important to me? It's not as important. So you want to make sure that the stuff that you're keeping on the resume is highly relevant to me and my company. That's what's going to stand out. And so again, kind of going back to the riddle that I talk about a lot on the stream is, how do you make a sculpture of an elephant? Start with a big block of stone, chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. Same thing with a resume. How do you look like the best candidate? You make a big resume and you trim away everything that doesn't make you look like the best candidate for their job. So make that big resume. Put all your projects on there, all the impact that you had. Put lots of bullet points about all of these other jobs. And then when you go apply for a job, make a copy of it, trim it back down to 1 page. It'll take 5-10 minutes at most, because you've already got the layout, you've already got the formatting, you've already got the content on there. You just have to trim away the stuff that company's not going to care about. Bring it down to one page if you can. Or once you start expanding out those projects, and tell me a little bit more about those projects, maybe this will expand into a full 2 pages instead of being like one full page and then like a third or so of a second page. I would say if it does trickle down into a second page, you want to use at least 2/3 of that page. You don't necessarily have to fill up 2 pages top to bottom. But one thing you could do is if you move this skills block into its own sort of block over here on the left, that's also going to push everything down a little bit and help you fill out a 2-page resume. Because again, you've got good professional experience where you're quantifying the content about what you did in those roles and talking about the impact that you had in those roles. That's important to see on a resume. So what I might do is try to fill up page 1 with all the technical stuff and put all of the non-technical stuff on page 2, which would be your education and these other previous jobs. If it does trickle over into a page 2, I would say if you're going to build a contact block like I did up here at the top, copy that contact block onto the top of page 2. So if they do happen to print out of like an actual printed copy, and they get separated, they know who page 2 belongs to. But it'll also use up a little more vertical space as well. So if you really need to like fill out that space a little bit more, putting that contact block at the top of page 2 will also fill up page 2 a little bit more. There's a couple little things there. Ship That Code says, so fewer bullet points for the prior jobs, and how far back would you go? I mean, on one of my resumes, I go all the way back to like my first job out of college, which was 1996, because that job I was doing sales engineering and customer support. I'm currently in a developer advocacy role where those skills were important. And so on my developer relations resume, I put that on there, even though it's really old experience, like 26-year-old experience. That experience is probably older than some of you in chat right now. But I put it on that particular resume because that's important to the companies who are looking at my developer relations experience, and the fact that I've been doing this my whole career. I started my career thinking about customers and thinking about the impact and the engineering effort of how to serve customers. So I keep all of that on there. It's all about how you spin, and like when they're reading the resume, like I'm sure people looking at my resume are like, why is this on here? This is like 25 years ago. But when I write out that cover letter and the first thing I'm saying in that cover letter is like, I've been doing this my whole career, they're like, oh, that's why it's on the resume. So it's all about how you tie this in. Like, how do you tell that story? So when people are saying, tell me about yourself, they don't want to know your life story. They want to know, how are all of these skills combined to make you the superhero that you are with these superpowers that you have? What are you going to come do for us? That's really what they're asking. They certainly want to know about you, and they want to know, like, how did you get these skills and what did you study and all that kind of stuff. They certainly want to know that stuff too. But at the end of the day, you have to know how to tell that story. And that comes down to understanding how these pieces of your background fit into your current story. How does that experience in those other roles help you in this job? Like, if you're going to come work at my company, how does this help me? If you can say, I'm headed in that direction, you're also headed in that direction, we might as well do that together, right? They're way more likely to interview you, way more likely to hire you, because you're showing that alignment. I know I said I hate buzzwords, but it does show the alignment that you're going the same direction that they are. So if you understand how that experience makes you a better developer, then you speak to that. Same thing, like I often get people in chat who are like, oh, you know, my first job was customer service and I don't know how to get out of that because now the only jobs that anybody ever offers me are support roles. Or I started in QA and now that's all I can ever do. And I tell people on the stream all the time, it's like, no, you need to explain that you did that with intention. You did it on purpose. You got that role as a QA engineer to make you a better developer. Now you're going to be a better developer for them in that role. So it's all about how you tell that story. But knowing how to word that story is something that you need to take some time to think about and practice and refine with somebody that you can do like a mock interview, or just write it out and send it to somebody and say like, hey, This is my background, this is my resume. When people say, tell me about yourself, I want to say this. How does this sound? I mean, heck, connect with me on LinkedIn. Go find me on the socials and connect with me and send me that statement if you want. I've also got an email series that you can go check out too. There it is. And the first email in that series is, how do you tell me about yourself? That whole email series, by the way, it's not like, here's how to answer it perfectly. This is why I ask that kind of question in the first place, as a hiring manager. And that whole first message, I basically encourage you at the end of it, if you want help with it, hit reply on that message. It comes straight to my inbox. Send me your resume. Send me what that paragraph or 2 paragraphs is that you want to say. Like when somebody says, tell me about yourself, I want to say this. How does that sound? I can look over your resume and I'll maybe ask you some questions back and forth, but I'm happy to help with that kind of stuff. It's not going to be scalable if this community grows, but right now it's perfectly scalable and I can help people out. So I'm happy to do that for you. You just have to contact me and ask for help. That's what I'm here for. Saw some other stuff go by in chat here. Let me go back and find it. Really building the elephant from the ground up. You're not building the elephant from the ground up. That's the thing. So going back to that riddle of how do you make the sculpture of the elephant, you're not gluing the rock together to build the elephant. You're chipping away the rock that's already there to expose just the elephant. And that's what you want to do with that really big resume. You want to have all the projects, all the skills, and then you're going to take away the stuff that company's not going to care about when you go apply at that company. This other company, something else may be more relevant. So you're going to maybe remove a different kind of project and highlight another kind of project because that's more important to that other company. And so by having all that stuff in a big resume to begin with, it makes it a lot easier to trim back down later because you've already got the content. You've already got the layout. All you have to do is go in and delete stuff and you bring it back down to 1 page, in your case, 2 pages. So maybe by the time you build all that stuff up together, it's going to be more than 2 pages long. That's okay as well. Make a copy of it, trim it back down to that 2 pages or whatever. And just keep the most relevant stuff to that company on the page because that's all they're going to care to read anyway. The less they have to read that shows this is the skill that I have, this is what I know, this is what I'm going to bring to your company, the faster they can see that, the faster they can get on the phone with you. If I, like, on one of those resumes, I had to, like, really kind of scan through and, like, try to find out, like, what are your actual skills? Like, they didn't have any kind of skills block on that resume. It's like, if I've got to hunt for that stuff, I'm not going to call you. Like, if you're going to make my job hard, I'm not going to call you. It's just how it is. Hey, Dota, good to see you. I legit started with, in the beginning, there was nothing. Do you want me to keep going? Yeah, I was born at a young age. Yeah, they don't want to know your whole life history. Like, I grew up riding horses and archery and whatever. Like, yeah, it might be interesting if they're like a horse company and they sell archery products or something. But like, again, if I'm like a web app, consultancy shop, like that's not going to matter to me. So you don't have to tell me that stuff. So whether you're in the interview or writing a resume, you only want me to hear the most relevant content. Otherwise, it's not so much that you're wasting time. I don't want to give the impression that you're wasting my time as the hiring manager by telling me that stuff, but it's not as important to me. And what I'm trying to get out of that interview is, why should I hire you? And if you're telling me all this other relevant stuff, it's like, okay, well, that's all interesting to know, but like, that doesn't help me make the decision of whether I want to hire you. Relevant info. I'm Canadian. So am I. In the beginning, I worked at a movie theater in Canadian Tire. And I still remember getting Canadian Tire money. Do they still give out Canadian Tire money? I remember finding like a $1 Canadian Tire, like $1 bill. And for those in chat that have no idea what I'm talking about, Canadian Tire is like a department store in Canada. And when you buy things, they actually give you sort of like a cashback thing in Canadian Tire dollars. And so they have like paper money. It looks like Monopoly money that have different denominations of like dimes, quarters, dollars, $5, $10, $50. And depending on how much you spend, they give you cash back in Canadian Tire money that you can actually go back and spend at face value later on. And so if there's something that costs $1, you give them a Canadian Tire $1 bill and you get that thing for free. And so they give you like a percentage of your of your purchase in Canadian Tire money. But yeah, I remember finding like a $1 Canadian Tire, like $1 bill, and like going into the store and like trying to buy something with it, and I was like shocked. I'm like, this isn't real money, and they're giving me stuff. Like, are they gonna stop me for stealing later? Like, I was like 4 at the time, but it was magical. I think they changed the way Canadian Tire money works, but the spirit remains. Oh, now it's on a card. Interesting. Good times. I miss Canada. Send me some bits and bytes, would you? Cold Cash is the real deal. Every time I want to return something from Amazon, I take it to Kohl's and they're like, here's a 15% off coupon. And I go around the store and realize that everything's already like 15% off. And I'm like, I'm always confused. Like, do I get another 15% off, or everything's already on sale at Kohl's anyway? Cool. Well, those are the resumes. Let me double check to see if any others came in. No other resumes came in. Oh, there was one more that I missed actually from the other day. Let me go pull that one up real quick. Just want to double check if they have anonymized it. They have not anonymized it at all, but they did check the checkbox saying that's okay. So, okay. You said it's all right. There you go. Find this window. We'll go look at this one real quick, and then we'll wrap up for the night. So hopefully the advice and ideas were helpful. I know some of it felt a little repetitive, but I was trying to find ways to not make it as repetitive. All right, so last one that we had, this person didn't anonymize their resume at all. So let's zoom out on it a little bit here. Overall, pretty decent layout, but all this big gap right here in the middle, I think could be better used. So let me get this out of the way. So they say, hey, I am Dervish. Okay, I'm looking for an SDE role. I'm looking for SDE role opportunities. Is my resume fit for that kind of role? So they're just saying like, I want to be a developer. Does this look like a developer resume? Let's go find out. So they start with their education. Again, some companies are going to care about education. They want to see that first and foremost. I would say if it's like a really popular sort of school that is known for computer science and things like that, then yeah, put it near the top. There are companies out there, for example, that will bias in your favor if you've got like Stanford or MIT and Georgia Tech, like those really top brand name kinds of schools that actually have pretty good, computer science programs. If you went to like Jim and Bob's community college, not to downplay community college because I'm a community college grad myself, I would probably put the education stuff down at the bottom. Once you start getting work experience, where you went to school is less important than your work experience. In this case, they did a hackathon for experience. They did another hackathon for experience. Again, is it experience? Did you get paid for it? Like in my mind, it's professional experience when you get paid for it. Otherwise, it's project experience, even hackathons. I would consider that a hackathon project. Therefore, it's project-based learning and not necessarily professional experience. If it's something that actually got picked up and used by another company, or it actually like got some traction, you have some users, then yeah, it's experience. But if this is just something like, this is just something that I put together on a weekend for a hackathon, I wouldn't necessarily consider that professional experience. For me, that's just more project work. I feel like I missed something in chat. Hey Zenaboth, thanks for the first time chat. Heading out, this is really interesting. Awesome. What's your working experience? I'd throw at least a couple of jobs, even if they're unrelated. Yeah, so they've got project work, they've got achievements, they've got extracurricular. I mean, they may not have other work experience. That might be okay too. They might have come right out of high school, went straight into college, and now they're looking for their job. Actually, they're still in college. So they're expected to graduate in 2023. So they're still a college student, in which case it's perfectly okay if you don't have other work experience. I think that's fine. But yeah, in that case, I would move all of this hackathon stuff under just your project work. We've already covered like how to talk about your projects and things like that. You're kind of going back and forth between like title case and all caps, another all caps, and then back to like your tech stack. But then you're also doing, and again, it may not really show up on the stream, but they've got like varying shades of like different shades of gray, basically. I was trying to find a way to not say 50 shades of gray, but I'm counting at least 3 shades of dark on the page. Their name is really dark. Their email address, like links, are another shade. These headers look slightly lighter. But there's also a lot of font change going on. There's font size change, there's styling change where some things are bold, some things are in this all caps font, some things are not. That's actually really tiring to read from a human being perspective. So again, highlight all of this stuff, make it a single font face on the entire page. If you really want your name to be in a different font, that's fine. This name is gigantic on the page. I would probably shrink this font size a tiny bit. They are pushing that top margin really tight, which is okay. There's lots of space down at the bottom though, so they maybe don't need that top margin to be quite so tight. But give yourself a title under here. Like call yourself a developer or something like that. But then these headers also look quite large compared to other font on the page. This font size appears to be a different font size than this. It's a little hard to tell whether this is the exact same font and font size as it is over here. So again, like just highlight everything on the page. Make everything the same font size. Just make everything 10-point font. Then go back and make these headers, make these headers like 12-point font or 14-point font. And then make your name like 18 or 20, but don't go much bigger than that. It's not really necessary to make your name bigger than that on the page. Again, 2-column layouts are fine. But when you consider they've got all this empty space in between here, I think some of this could be a little bit done a little bit differently. In this case, they're saying what they think they are proficient in and what they think they are familiar in. I would just say these are the languages I know. I know C, C++, I know Kotlin, I know JavaScript as my languages. XML, YAML, I mean, technically the L means language, but these are also supposed to be like fully capitalized. DBMS, that's okay, database management system, but which one? MySQL should be capital Q, capital L. DBMS isn't really its own thing. Being proficient in that is fine, but I would just say SQL. Just say you know SQL. If you really want to call it like DBA duties or something, that would be fine. You could say like MySQL, comma, DBA, my mind just blanked on me what I would say there. Android Studio, again, nobody cares about the tools you use, so you don't have to list that kind of stuff. The fact that you work in Linux, that's fine. I mean, most production systems are going to be Linux based, so knowing that you've got experience in that is okay. But this does kind of beg the question, do you know about Linux system administration, or are you just a user of Linux? Because that can have different ideas and implications on how I think about your technical skills and what you know, and so on. So yeah, I would just list all the languages together, list all the frameworks together, and so on. I think I've gone over that kind of stuff enough. You've got your contact information here for links to like LinkedIn and GitHub. I would put that up here at the top. In fact, you give me your LinkedIn contact up here at the top. So I would move some of these other things up here. Is it important to have Code Chef and LeetCode links on here? Me personally, as a hiring manager, I don't give a rip about seeing LeetCode on a resume. Some people really care about it because they grind a lot on LeetCode. In this case, their work went down, so this isn't going to help you. Top 91%, okay. Pretty good rank, but that ranking is going down over time. So it's not a great look. You've solved 54 problems. It's fine. It's not impressive. You've got all these big gaps here of like when you did those problems. So it's not like solid LeetCode study like all the time. So again, if this was a GitHub graph, this would show me like, oh, you did a little bit of code and then you took a month off, and then you did a little bit of code and you took a month off, and you did a little bit of code, and then you got a little busier, but then you kind of took another month off. Like if this was your GitHub contribution graph, I'd be like, do you like why aren't you coding all the time? Like, why aren't you committing stuff to GitHub on a more regular basis? I would look at the same thing as far as LeetCode. Now, the fact that this person's a student, they've got classes and they've got other stuff going on, so I'm not going to hold that against them, but I would want to try to make this as normalized as possible. Otherwise, this doesn't help. Get this off the resume. That would be my take. This doesn't help your case. Let's go look at their GitHub. So they're doing the custom README on here, which is fine. Contribution graph, which is okay. But this is the contribution graph I care about. So lots of gaps on here. But again, they're a student. That's fine. They're learning and they're growing and they've actually learned Git and GitHub along the way. So that's okay. The fact that this isn't solid green is not a concern to me, but I can go in and I can see what kinds of projects are they contributing to, which ones have they pinned. These are the things that are important to them. How does this compare with the projects they actually put on the resume? That's one thing that I find interesting. Open source programs for women, LeetCode problems, Tin Dog, dice rolling game, countdown timer. Let's go see what they actually put on the resume. RS meetup and their countdown timer. So they highlighted 2 projects on the resume here. They have 6 of them pinned over on GitHub. But some of these are their hackathon projects. I forget if Smart Traffic Light was one of their GitHub projects. Tin Dog Countdown, nope. So was that hackathon project open source? If it was, like, get that on here. Well, I mean, it's on here, but like, show me that code. You actually do list the code. You do give me a link to it, but it's not one of your pinned projects. So the one thing that I would recommend here is if you've got pinned projects on your GitHub profile, those should probably be some of the projects that you're highlighting on your resume. Generally on a resume, you're going to put 3 or 4 projects. That's 3 or 4 projects that you could be pinning on your GitHub repo or on your GitHub profile. Reduce the traffic by 90% of roads. That's fantastic. I love seeing impact statements like that. Now, was this the goal or was this what you actually were able to solve as part of that hackathon? What we saw in GitHub was like a breadboard with some LEDs. So did this actually get used? Or was this just an idea that you had and the goal was to reduce it by 90%? So that I would probably want to clarify a little bit. Secure wireless controller handheld remote for an emergency vehicle to cross traffic early. That's cool. College finalist team, problem solver. Okay, so this tells me kind of what your role was. Like you were figuring out the problem, but did you actually code any of this? That's what I would want to see. I can go in here and I can look at who contributed. In this case, this is your GitHub profile. I go into Insights. It looks like you were the only contributor to this. So this feels disconnected to me a little bit because you're saying that you were part of a team, but when I go look at the code on GitHub, you're the only contributor. To me, my first instinct is you've taken your team code, you've put it on GitHub as a single contribution where nobody else gets any credit. So you've made it look like you have built this whole project, but you're telling me on the resume it was a team project. I would want to see what your contribution was to the entirety of the project and not make it look like you did all the work. So that would be one thing that kind of stands out to me on that one. Too many things happening at the same time. No worries. Hey GBEF, good to see you. Hope your stream was good. What's Proteus? Is it firmware stuff? That's a good question. Let's go find out. I mean, it's a bacteria. PCB. Proprietary software for electronic design automation. So it looks like they're building circuitry. So it was probably for this project to turn this into like a circuit board. So it looks like they built it with an Arduino, but they might have used Proteus then to actually turn this into like an actual circuit design. But we don't get to see any of the circuit design stuff on here. All we have is the Arduino code. So it shows, screenshots of it running. That's fine. So those are the first couple things that sort of stand out to me. COVID chatbot, another hackathon project. You tell me here that it's a COVID chatbot, and then you're telling me here it's a COVID-19 pandemic COVID chatbot. Totally redundant statement. You can take that line out completely. You're telling me again it's a COVID-19 bot. So you can just say helps provide, authentic and real-time information to the user in a conversational manner. Okay, so we've already established it's a chatbot. Number of links returned by the FAQ chat is less than those produced by Google. Google's going to have like a gazillion links about COVID. So unless your chatbot's like dumping, tons and tons of stuff, it's going to be less. But I think what they're meaning to say here is that they're sort of curating a smaller, more impactful list of URLs to reply in chat, something along those lines. So I think they could probably reword this a little bit differently. Designed and developed a video call Android app that can support up to 20 users in a single video call. I would definitely reword this. Developed multi-user communication platform for Android or something like that. Android calling application. So you've already told me about the application, so you can take that out. Developed for receiving and calling and created. So you've already told me what the application does. So it's a video call. So this whole thing can be gone. Created through Android Studio. All this can go away. Contains additional features and better UI. Well, like additional features to what? Like compared to what? So telling me that it has additional features and a better UI than Google Meet, than Zoom, than what? So again, just be careful about how you're wording things, that the idea is clear. Countdown timer for New Year's. Website that has a countdown time until New Year. Yep, you've already told me that by the name of the thing. So again, you've got the name of the project, which goes to your GitHub, and then you're giving me the name of the project, which matches what you're telling me on GitHub. So what I would probably do is just change countdown timer here that you're putting on the resume, and just have like the title of the project and then just the word GitHub, and make that a link to GitHub. So very similar to what we did with the project block over here, is just put a link, like literally label it GitHub. Otherwise, it looks like you're putting the same text on here a bunch of times and being really redundant about it. Achievements. Hacktoberfest open source program. You were a participant in that. Is that an achievement? Like, did you get a prize or an award? If you were just one of millions of users that were part of Hacktoberfest, then that's not really an achievement. Ideathon, secure third position. So you got third place in this. That's fine. You were a team leader in that thing, in the competition. Smart India Hackathon finalist team. That's fine. That's an achievement. 307 global ranking code chef. For me, again, as a hiring manager, those kinds of stats don't matter to me. Because again, when we looked at Leak Code, we saw your stats were going down, and that's not a good look. Let's go look at Code Chef. I don't even know what Code Chef is. So, really big win, and then it dropped off pretty significantly over like several months, and it's just started to pick back up. Rating distribution, show me some submissions. You've solved 42 problems. So again, like I know people that have done like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of problems on these platforms. So is it impressive that you've done 40? Well, if you did 40 and you placed at a really high rank, then that's impressive. So again, I don't want to downplay what you've done on your resume, but you do need to look at like, is this actually going to matter to the company where I'm applying? If they're not into competitive programming, or as you're doing your research and you're finding out about companies and you network with them and you say like, hey, I do competitive programming, is that going to matter? Is that going to help me during the interview? And the people you talk to are like, meh, then I would take it off the resume if they don't think that it's going to help. You could bring it up in the interview and they say like, tell me about yourself, and you can give them that story and say, I also do competitive programming on the side, and actually got like a really high rank on a couple of these platforms for a little while. That sounds good verbally. I don't know that it needs to be on a resume. So again, just picking and choosing like what's good to have on the resume and what can you talk about verbally. When you talk about interests, competitive programming, yep, we've established that. Puzzle solving, open source. Interests, I generally tell people like keep those things on there again if they're relevant to the company. If it's important to the company, if they're looking for people that work on open source projects and you know that that's part of their company culture, keep that on there. Otherwise, I would take some of that stuff off. Extracurricular, let's dive in on some of this stuff here. Got to zoom in a little bit because they changed the font again. Data structures and algorithms, mentor. Okay. So I would start with the word mentor. Member of college community, eCell and tech community, co-founder, Bug Slayers community, Google Cloud Ready facilitator program, mentee in open source program. Okay. So these are extracurricular, but these are all tech related. So in this case, I think that that's fine. If you need room on the page, if you need to fill room on the page, putting this kind of stuff on here to fill that up is fine. But again, I want to know like, how do these achievements help me? What is it about these achievements that are going to make you a better employee for me? So being able to talk about the impact that this had and why this matters to a company is the kind of thing that you need to communicate on a resume. Because again, we've got a very small amount of time where we're actually reading through your resume and trying to determine, should I call this person? I need to see in a hurry why this matters to me. Otherwise, it's just text on a page. It's like, okay, you do leak code. So does everybody else that's trying to apply for my job right now. Why does it matter that you've got this leak code link on here? Why does it matter that you did this global rank on CodeChef? Like, just to give you an idea, like what goes through my mind is like, I've never heard of CodeChef. If I find out they've only got 500 people on the platform and you ranked 300 out of 500, that's not very impressive. If they've got 1 billion users and you ranked 300, that's impressive, right? But not knowing that for me, because I don't know that platform, that doesn't tell me anything. Like ranked 300 out of how many? Is it out of 10,000, 100,000, 1 million users? Like ranked 300 out of how many? So again, being able to show those kinds of things as part of the impact that you have and that you're going to bring to my company is what's going to stand out as a candidate. Dota says I put dodgeball, social skills or something, maybe highlight the hardest or most fun projects you did. Yeah, I mean, they're still a student, so they're still going to be continuing to learn, maybe do some internships, depending on what's available where they live, if they have those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, the hackathons are definitely social events. A lot of these things are definitely going to help on the social event side of things. But again, some of these bullet points have like extra space in between them than others. So again, just being like really careful about how you're doing those things. All the things over here have all these bullet points except these links. So again, I would probably just put bullet points around all of these. But since you've got LinkedIn at the top, it doesn't belong here. I would probably also put GitHub at the top with a capital H, put that at the top with your contact info. And if these things are really important to you, I would probably list them under this competitive programming and not have like a links section. I would just say competitive programming and then say like LeetCode, CodeChef, and just let me click through to that. If I care, I'll click through. Yeah, LinkedIn has a capital I, not a lowercase I, and you missed the letter E in there. So like just being really careful about what you're writing. Also, these aren't full sentences necessarily, so don't end things with periods. Coursework, Udemy, data structures and algorithms, Udemy introduction to GitOps, Linux Foundation, Python, Pluter, never heard of Pluter, Android development, coding blocks. So it's a little bit hard to tell from this, like, is Udemy its own thing? And then introduction to GitOps was its own thing? Because Linux Foundation, I know, is its own sort of phrase, and then Python is going to be its own phrase. But like coding blocks web development, or is coding blocks its own thing and web development is its own thing, but then you're listing Udemy again? Or did, now that I've actually taken like several seconds to read through, I realized data structures and algorithms was something that you did on Udemy. Introduction to Git Ops from the Linux Foundation in Python, you did maybe on Pluto, or Introduction to Git Ops you did as part of Linux Foundation. You did Python coursework on Plutor. You did Android development on whatever Coding Blocks is. Like, I haven't heard of Coding Blocks as a platform. So again, like, link to it or something so that it's a little clearer to me, like what you've done. But if you're learning electronics and communication and engineering, seeing that you're having to go outside of your school to learn some of these programming skills that you have, make me wonder, like, how aligned is your education goal with your career goal? Because you're getting a bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering. You're writing a resume as though you want to be a software developer. How is your academic career helping your software development career? And it's okay if it's not, because we've looked at other resumes where people are doing job changes and are getting into a role that's not, you know, their education background. But even your public school had computer science in here. So it makes me think a little bit around, is this really aligned? Because the coursework that you're showing me here for data structures and Python and web development and Android development are all outside of your school. So what are you learning at school that's going to be helpful to me and my company? How is that kind of lining up and shaping up? If you want to be a developer who also tinkers in electronics, then, you know, this project actually shows how you're combining those skills together as a software developer, as well as like building that stoplight electronics kit and doing the PCB generation and stuff like that, where all of the other projects that you have appear to be entirely software based, which is okay too. But what kind of developer do you want to be? If you want to be an IoT developer, then you'll put more hardware projects on here. If you want to be just a software developer, or if my company only cares about software, then maybe the hardware project isn't as important for me to see on this resume. So again, this kind of goes back to the whole thing about how do you build a big resume and then trim it back down to only the relevant things for whichever company where you're applying for that job. Cool. I'm going to stop repeating myself over and over around some of that advice. Let me hydrate a little. Me Too says there's no job title listed at the top. It's hard to tell what position they're looking for. Exactly. And that was one of the things that I mentioned, like under their name, because their name was enormous on that page, is like shrink the font, give yourself a title, put your contact information on there, because that sets me up a little bit for like, oh, this is what you want to be. Now, in this person's case, they want to be a software developer. They happen to be studying electronics and hardware at the same time. They can still be a software developer in IoT, like Internet of Things, and still be a software engineer. They happen to have really good experience with hardware, and so that could be really relevant to an IoT company. So those are all possibilities for them. But yeah, it would be nice to see a title on there so that it sets the expectation of, hey, as you're reading through this resume, I'm calling myself a software engineer, or I'm calling myself, you know, an IoT engineer or something along those lines. Again, it just sets my expectation on what kind of job are you applying for? Like, why are you here? Why are we chatting? Why are you applying for this job? If you're not going, especially if you're not going to take the time to write a resume, because this, a cover letter, because this resume also doesn't have kind of that summary statement at the top, which I usually tell people to get rid of anyway, and take the time to write a cover letter, because you can explain in that cover letter why your skills matter to that company. Cool. We are one follower away from 1,100 followers. If you are listening and you are not a follower, go ahead and mash that follow button for me so I can get to 1,100. That'll cap it off at a really good night. Don't unfollow and refollow. That doesn't count. But if you're listening, if you're hanging out, we got about 20 viewers or so. If you're hanging out and you are not following the channel, please do so. I like to help with interview prep and career prep. Tonight was just resumes. We did start the stream with a couple of questions kind of as we went. But yeah, I'm one follower away from 1,100. Somebody get me over that line, would you? I thought I heard you say that unrelated earlier. Oh, unrelated, me too. Is there a reason that you don't have low latency enabled on your channel? I can't seem to get less than about an 8 or 9 second delay, whereas most channels with low latency get 1 to 2 second delay. No idea. That is a good question. Why don't I have that on there? I don't know. Is it important to have? I mean, I'll go turn it on. I don't have a good answer for you as to why I don't have that. And the low latency, I think it has to do with like how close I am to Twitch's servers, and it uses maybe different amounts of bandwidth or different bandwidth or something like that. Streamer setting to decrease the delay. I mean, if this was like a highly interactive thing where like as soon as you hit a chat command, my lights blink, I mean, that's not really what I'm going for on the channel here. It's not like we're playing real-time games and stuff like that. But I mean, if I turn it on, the question that I have is, if I turn it on, is it going to have an impact on other things that I do as a streamer? Like, is it going to use more bandwidth and things like that? I have unlimited bandwidth at home, so I'm not worried about that. So let me go in and take a peek at my settings, see if that's going to matter. So tell me the impact of this. Why does this matter to me and my business? Let me go into my settings, creator dashboard. Wait, yeah, settings, stream. Latency mode, normal latency. Enable this setting if you do not interact with viewers in real time. Low latency is best for near real-time interactions with viewers. All right, I'll turn it on. It's on. Go ahead and reload the page. I don't know if it'll matter or why it'll matter. I guess we'll find out. I reloaded a browser window and I got my pre-roll ad. Hooray for pre-roll ads. It's the only ad that I've got on there. Never heard of it. I don't know, but let's paste it twice. All right, well, let's see. I don't know. Let's see what kind of impact this has. I mean, I still see like a 3 or 4 second delay watching in another browser. Six-second delay. So I don't know if that matters. I don't know if it made any difference at all, but I reloaded here and I still see a 6-second delay. So I don't know. This is all to trick me into watching a movie advertisement, isn't it? Yeah, because I make so much money as a streamer. I'm making the bucks, let me tell you. I'm making those big dollars. I'd be real transparent with you about the dollars I'm making here. This is me as a streamer. So since we did our diversity and tech fundraiser on the 23rd, come in here, reset all my stats, made $125 since the end of June. I made $3.66 on ads. Woohoo! So that pre-roll ad that y'all got to sit through, you've made me a whopping cup of coffee worth of ad revenue. Hooray! Good job, everybody. High fives. I mean, I don't do ads. I think ads are kind of annoying, but I get it. Twitch has as a platform. So going back to something that I talked about at the very beginning of the stream, I actually went through like all the people that I follow and actually canceled almost all of the subscriptions to channels, except for a handful of channels where, you know, I really, you know, care about that particular streamer and what they do. But otherwise, I pay for Twitch Turbo now. So if you subscribe to more than 2 Twitch channels to get rid of ads, you might as well pay for Twitch Turbo and get rid of all the ads. And it's actually more beneficial to a streamer if you just straight up donate cash or cheer bits instead of subscribing. So I actually made a chat command called don't sub. So if you want to be an impact on the fundraiser, don't subscribe, just donate cash. When you sub or gift out subs, I only get half of that revenue. When you cheer bits and when you donate directly through the About Me section below on Twitch, I get almost all of that money. And then all of that money goes into the fundraiser. When you subscribe, I only get half of that money, and that goes in the fundraiser. I'm still matching everything that goes into the fundraiser either way. But when you pay $5 to subscribe, $5 total goes into the fundraiser. Your $250 plus my $250, but I'm only getting $250 of that $5 that you're spending on my channel. So I would encourage you, don't subscribe. If you want to have an impact on the channel and you want to help me out as a streamer by donating to the Diversity in Tech fundraiser, just cheer bits. Every bit is worth a penny, and I get almost all of those pennies. And straight donations, I get 100% of that money. And then I match all of that. And so you will have the biggest impact on the Diversity in Tech fundraiser by donations and cheering bits. When does the fundraiser end? It never ends. So this fundraiser is going to go till the end of the year. And then we're going to reset everything in January, and we're going to do a full year-long fundraiser. Like, we're just going to keep it running and see how much we can raise all next year. The reason that I'm stopping this one at the end of the year is so that next year when we restart the fundraiser again, my employer, Postman, they will match $1,500 of any money that we raise every calendar year. So that's going to reset in January. When I did the giveaway back in June, I used up all $1,500 for the entire year of 2022. And so whatever we raise now for the last half of 2022, it's just going to be this money plus whatever I match. My employer is not going to be adding additional money to it. And so I would love for this to make as much impact as we can on diversity in tech. In 2023, my employer is going to kick in another $1,500. As long as we raise $1,500, they're going to match that. Well, they'll match up to $1,500. So, yeah. Oh, when does this fundraiser end? Oh, like ever? Like, am I just always going to be raising money for this? Yes. That is my goal. I care a lot about diversity in tech, and I'm just going to constantly raise money for this effort so that I can increase diversity in tech. So yeah, this is just something I'm just going to keep going all the time. I may not always show this on the screen all the time, but this is who I am. This is important to me, and this is something that I'm going to continue to do. And so same thing with the giveaways and the 3D printed stuff, all that kind of stuff. We'll still be doing that on a regular basis. So we're going to do the next big like 3D printed giveaway thing in October, which is coming up. I got to figure out what I'm going to 3D print for that. I need to figure that out pretty soon too. Oh, RC Maniac, I canceled my Prusa XL order and I decided I'm going to order a Voron. So I've actually got Voron parts printing over on my Mark IIIs right now. I don't do anything except a Prime sub and then do direct donates. Google and Amazon have YouTube and Twitch as zero-sum systems. Yeah, they don't need pity subs. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by this fundraiser. You answered the question already. End of year. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is going to run till the end of the year, and then we're just going to reset it again for all next year. And I may not set like a particular goal of like, let's raise $1,500. I might do like a quarterly basis, like let's try to do like $500 a quarter or something like that. As long as we can raise more than $1,500 over the year, my employer will match $1,500. So that's what I'm going to aim for. So so yeah, as far as 3D printed stuff, I'm not exactly sure yet what we're going to do for the giveaway. I do have these larger dragons. I'm actually going to get one of these ready to send to Babe Ross. If anybody follows Babe Ross, she has expressed interest in painting one of these 3D dinosaurs, dragons, where like all the parts fit together. She actually wants to paint one of those on her channel. So I'm gonna like box one of those up and send them to her. And then, but those are gonna be really expensive to kind of give away. One idea that I had was to make like a really big version of that dragon and give that away as a prize. But that's like a single giveaway. I'm not going to do that like for everybody that wins. So I'm trying to think of like, what can I 3D print and give away like a bunch of, like we did with the 3D printed dragons. Like these ones. So I started printing this one in that blue-red quantum filament, and then I ran out. It ran out right there on his head. And so I switched to a different blue and red quantum filament, but it actually turned the wrong way as it started to print. But I kind of actually like the effect. You know, it looks pretty interesting. But yeah, so I mean, I 3D printed tons and tons of these, and gave these away in May, and we gave them away at the end of the year last year. Not that I'm burned out on dragons, but I'm thinking like all of you might be a little burned out on dragons, but I really like this guy. He like stands up really nice. But yeah, the blue and the red looks really weird compared to the silky like raspberry and silky blue color. This is more of a matte finish, like it's a very flat color. If I did the whole dragon in that matte color, it would look great. But anyway. So I'm trying to think of what to 3D print. So if anybody's got ideas on things that you might like as a 3D printed giveaway, let me know. I mean, we certainly have the little tiny dragons that we did, and we had bigger versions of those as well. But I mean, that's not like super substantial as far as a giveaway. And my X1 won't be in probably until sometime in October. So maybe whatever we plan, I'll just like start burning through those and ship them out at the end of October once the X1 comes in or something like that. I don't know. Something print in place. I thought about print in place. I thought about one kit that I've got is like a little PTFE or not PTFE, PTTG catapult. You assemble it and it's literally a little catapult that you like pull back and it springs and like flicks like a little wad of paper or something like that. You know, I'm thinking it's something that I can print flat with an instruction card and like send out to people. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Something along those lines, or like, you know, the ornaments or whatever that you can like 3D print, like disassemble and like you can hang it as an ornament or whatever. There's lots of those kinds of things. And initially I was thinking, you know, we could do like a Star Wars based kit where you get like 2 or 3 cards and one's an X-Wing fighter and one's a TIE fighter and one's the Death Star or something like that. And you just assemble them and you've got little 3D printed things. And do another one of like a catapult and a ballista or something. I don't know. Like that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, what do I print? And do I make it like a little kit of like a couple of things? Or do you get like one of them? Do I make it a surprise? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, if anybody's got ideas on what I can 3D print as a giveaway, that would be fantastic. Personally, I'm a big fan of these like infinite folding like fidget cubes that just like constantly fold on each other. I've got one of these like nearby all the time. They're fantastic. But I got a ton of filament that I can use up on things. I'm just trying to figure out what else to build, like what to 3D print. Anyway, when the X1 comes in, I'm going to sell one of my Prusa Mark IIIs, and once I build the Voron, I'm going to get rid of another Prusa, maybe, or it might just go into storage, because you can never have too many 3D printers. But for what I want to build down here, for the Voron and the X1, they're going to use a lot of power, so I don't know that I'll be able to actually physically have that many 3D printers in my basement, because I won't have enough power to power them all, plus all of this. So I gotta figure all that stuff out too. Anyway, so if anybody's got ideas on what I could 3D print for that giveaway in October, I would appreciate hearing any ideas. Otherwise, appreciate all the follows and stuff like that. Still wondering about the X1. Not sure I trust it. I was going through the code. Some of it's just random. I mean, the performance that I'm seeing on it seems legit. I'll have a better idea like once I actually get it and get hands-on with it. I have heard of like hardware problems and hardware issues with it, and I'm like backer 6,000, so they've only done like 4,000 of them so far. So I'm hoping that, you know, the feedback that they start getting, they're gonna like fix for the last couple of thousand that they need to make, and mine will be perfect. Doug's VRM, good to see you. Thanks for the first time chat. Should it be related to the channel? Not really. You're new here. Well, welcome. So I'm doing a diversity in tech fundraiser, and it's just something that I have ongoing all the time. And usually twice a year, I'm doing some kind of giveaway where I 3D print something, and that's like a giveaway kind of thing, just doing, you know, to do it as part of the fundraising effort. But I have to make sure that whatever I'm giving away is either okay to do like at a commercial level, or that I can contact the developer and say, hey, I'm doing a fundraiser and I want to do a giveaway. Can I include your model as part of that giveaway? Which we did with MacGyver's 3D printed dragon. It's not the dragon that I just showed, it's the other style of dragon. I actually got in touch with them and they're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And then I told him afterwards, I'm like, dude, we raised like $5,000. He's like, I'm really happy I could be a part of that. Like, he was really thrilled about it. And I'm like, what can I do to like pay you back and whatever? Because like he doesn't he doesn't allow any more people in the US to be licensed commercial vendors of his models. He's like, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep buying your models then, because, you know, he's a great modeler. But he was really happy to hear about the impact that we had as a community. So, you know, if he comes out with a new model by then, I mean, we could look at some of MacGyver's stuff. I tried reaching out to Flexi Factory about this Imperial Dragon to find out, like, can I give that one away as the giveaway? And they never got back to me. So I thought about just buying into their Patreon thing and actually getting a commercial license, just because I don't want there to be any appearance of like, oh, you're paying me for this dragon. It's like, no, you're adding money to this fundraiser as part of this fundraising effort, and I'm giving you a dragon as a thank you. But to some people, that looks like you're selling a dragon for however much money they donated. And so I'm, you know, I want to be careful about that kind of stuff, that, you know, I'm not like putting out a bad appearance or something like that. Anyway, Dota, good to have you. Thanks for dropping by. Send me some bits and bytes. Just kidding. I will totally pay you to ship me some bits and bytes. DM me. Let me know. I would love you to send me some bits and bytes and I will reimburse you. Cool. Let's see what else is going on. What about some Chaos Cortex Skull Bowls and Planters? Yeah, I mean, any kinds of those ideas I'm happy to consider. Just saw the bot shout out UK Mad LZ. So Mike is actually going to be on the stream on Sunday. So he's going to be our guest on Sunday. He's over in the UK. He does developer relations. Really funny guy. I like hanging out on his channel in the mornings and just have him on in the background. He's got a, you know, kind of a fun outlook on being a developer and you know, really laid back, super casual, super chill, all that kind of stuff. So really, really interesting person. Looking forward to getting to know Mike and hearing more of his background and talk about tech interviewing over in the UK and what that's like, just to give us some extra perspective. Flexi Factory stuff is cool too, yeah. So I've tried reaching out to Flexi Factory to say, like, can I give this stuff away as part of a giveaway? And they never responded. So I could buy into the Patreon just for the month, just so it looks like I had the commercial license, you know, just in case they think that I'm actually selling the things. But I don't know, that feels weird too, to just only do it for a month. So I would rather reach out to them and get their permission that, yes, we can give away, you know, a print of one of their models, not all of their models, but like go do the Flexi Frog or something like that, or, you know, go find like one of their models and say, this one is okay to do as a giveaway. And then I can print that up in all different colors and, you know, all kinds of fun filaments and whatever. So, how do I keep my filament? Do I keep them in airtight containers? Not really. So filament does break down over time. And so I've got some filaments that are like 4+ years old that when I print with them now, they're just garbage. And trying to dehydrate them doesn't help. So I forget who it was. I think it was Repcord. Rep. I don't know, the people that make the box, the Rep box or whatever. They actually did a video recently. You can go find it on YouTube about, like, does dehydrating filament actually help? And their whole thing was like, dehydrating filament will actually break it down faster because it's made with organic process and organic materials. It'll actually break down faster. And their whole thing is like, just use it. And if it's old, toss it and buy a new one. Because by the time you print it over and over and over again, all you're doing is you're using up like the stuff that has absorbed moisture, and you're getting to the inner part of the core that hasn't absorbed maybe as much moisture, but it's still just as old. And so it's still going to be breaking down like as a material. And they actually went in and like they were showing like the actual like molecules and how they break apart when it interacts with water and heat and stuff like that. It was actually a really interesting video. So for me, I have a cabinet which is sealed with weather stripping, and I do have like little dehydrator packs. I'll just grab one. This one I'm actually going to need to recharge pretty soon, but they just have the little silica pellets inside. And when they turn dark green, it's time to recharge. And there's a little plug on the back that you just like pop out. And you just stick it in the wall for a couple of hours, and it heats up and it dries out the desiccant in here. I charge these every couple of months. This one's actually turning pretty, well, you can't really tell in the light, but from some angles, it's really, really dark green. So I actually need to recharge some of them, but I rotate them on a regular basis as well. And you can also like take all the silica pellets out and put fresh pellets in if they start to wear down. Um, but I don't find that they actually take out very much moisture. I'm in Colorado, and so it's pretty dry here already. It gets a little more humid in the summer, but the winter is really dry. Like I'm constantly like shocking myself on stuff, so it's actually pretty dry here in Colorado. Um, so I try to keep it in a sealed cabinet, but it's not as important. My recommendation is if you've got a spool of filament that's been around for like 3 years, probably toss it and like just buy new filament. You keep stuff in freezer bags with desiccant. Yeah. So that the video from Repcord, they actually went into like how much does desiccant actually help. It was actually a really interesting video. Now I want to try and find it. Let's see. Because they were also talking about Thomson Latimer and how he like dumped, a whole spool of filament in a bucket of water and like left it there and then was still able to print with it. I can't quickly find it. If I go through my YouTube history, I would probably find it. I want to say they did it as like a YouTube live video, and I'm hoping that they kept it around afterwards. But yeah, their whole thing, like they actually went into the chemistry of it and why dehydrating actually doesn't help and will actually break it down faster. Do you know what ambient humidity levels are there? I mean, I want to say it's like less than 15%. I used to have like a little like clock thing on my desk, and then I would put them near the printers, and they would always register like 20% or less relative humidity. I think in the summertime it might get up to like 30%, but certainly not like some areas of the country where it's like 100% humidity. So yeah, so I mean the 3D printed thing, it doesn't have to be related to the channel, because I mean, what am I going to 3D print? Like, here's your 3D printed resume in a lithophane, kind of thing. That would be an interesting thing to 3D print a resume in a lithophane. But no, I don't really have any ideas. I mean, I like to do fun stuff. I like the dragons. I'm into Lego, but I don't have like a helmet printer or like a helmet sized printer. I could do like smaller helmets. I actually bought one of the Galactic Armory helmets, and I can print like a small version of it. But like you wouldn't be able to wear it. It might be like cat sized or something like that. If you have a cat that wants a stormtrooper helmet or something, I could maybe hook you up. But like, I don't know if GBav is still in chat or not, but GBav plays this Star Wars MMO game, and I offered to make a rebreather from one of the characters in the game. And I started printing it and it was having problems. So I'm going to wait for the X1 to come in so I can do the multicolor. And then I'm going to try to ship that to him in California. Otherwise, let's see what's going on. I have a number of long write-ups on Repcord's videos. In many cases where you can literally dry filament and it prints differently. So saying that you don't need to dry it is false and probably sits between dry everything and don't need special storage. Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting just from the chemistry point of view, where they were actually talking about like, because I mean, their whole thing is like, put it in the box with the little tubes and whatever, so it stays perfectly dry. So like, is it important that you try to protect it from humidity? I mean, yeah, because it is going to absorb some amount of humidity. But their whole thing was like, should you dehydrate it? Like once it absorbs humidity, like some filaments I think are going to do a better job drying, but you also have to be careful about like what temperature you dry it at and for how long. Like nylon, I know, is like horrific for absorbing ambient moisture and stuff like that. So it does help some things. I mean, I've got the little like dehydrator box from Sunlight. I've got several of them actually. And I've also got like the big round food dehydrator that I, tore out all the inside so I can fit a couple of spools of filament. Does it help? I mean, I haven't noticed that it helps. I mean, honestly, if I start seeing a bunch of stringing, my first thought is I need to fix retraction settings, and not that my filament is stringing because it's wet. So does it actually help? I don't know. But I just thought it was an interesting video because they were going into the chemistry and the science of it to try to figure out, like, does it actually help? I mean, the person that they were interviewing said, no, it doesn't help. Whether that's Repcord's official answer, I don't know. But they were hosting a conversation with this other guy about it. Alrighty, I think I'm gonna wrap up. I've been going for almost 4 hours now. I want to go check on. No, GBab's not in chat because he's streaming again. I'm gonna go check. No, they're not leak coding. So there is one person, and their name is going to be popping up in these automated things. But I'll give a shout out over here. So this person actually goes through leak code challenges, but they explain like how to think about leak code, and not just here's me grinding on leak code. They actually go into the thinking about like how to leak code and why. We're not going to raid over to his channel though. He's playing like Wordle or something right now. So we're going to go over to this channel instead. I'm going to go set up a raid, call it a night. I'll get this channel up on YouTube. We're going to go raid over to Chrissy Codes. And thanks for hanging out tonight. Thanks for the resumes that you submitted. We're gonna call it a night over here, and yeah, we'll catch you over on Chrissy's channel. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you on Sunday for a guest stream with Mike Elsmore from UK. Cheers.